My name is Harold Kingston. I never imagined that the son I carried, raised, and trusted with my whole heart would one day sit beside me in a notary's office, smiling as if everything were perfectly normal, while trying to take away the only home my late husband and I had ever built together. Then the notary looked down at one document, frowned, and quietly asked, "Mrs. Kingston, did you really sign this?" In that instant, I realized someone had stolen far more than my trust. If my story touches your heart, I'd love for you to stay with me until the very end. Please, like this video if you've ever believed families should protect, not betray. Subscribe if stories about resilience and justice speak to you. And before we begin, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. I'd truly love to know who's sharing this journey with me today. Before all of this happened, my life was quiet, not perfect, not fancy, not the kind of life people put in magazines, but it was mine. My name is Harold Kingston, and at 69 years old, I believed I had already survived the hardest losses a woman could survive. I had buried my husband, Michael Kingston. I had watched our only son, Ethan, grow from a soft-cheeked boy into a grown man with a wife, a job, bills, pride, and problems he rarely admitted out loud. I had learned how to sleep alone in a house that used to breathe with someone else's presence. The house sat on a calm street in Columbus, Ohio, with maple trees lining the sidewalk and neighbors who waved even when they were in a hurry. It was not a mansion. It was a 2-story brick home with white shutters, a porch Michael built with his own hands, and a kitchen window that looked out over the backyard where Ethan used to chase fireflies in summer. To anyone else, it was just property. To me, it was 38 years of marriage. Michael and I bought that house when we were still young enough to believe hard work could fix almost anything. He worked as a maintenance supervisor for a local hospital. I worked part-time at a public library, then later full-time after Ethan started middle school. We did not come from money. We counted coupons, drove used cars, patched things instead of replacing them, and ate leftovers without complaint. But every month, Michael would sit at the kitchen table with his reading glasses low on his nose and say, "One day, Harold, this place will be ours, free and clear." And one day it was. I still remember the afternoon we made the final mortgage payment. Michael came home with a grocery store cake that said "paid off" in blue icing. The bakery girl had misspelled it at first, and he laughed about it for 2 days. We ate that cake on paper plates in the living room, and he danced with me to an old Motown song playing from the radio. He held my hand and said, "No matter what happens, you will always have a roof over your head." At the time, I thought he was just being sentimental. After he died, those words became something I held on to like scripture. Ethan was 39 when his father passed. He cried hard at the funeral, harder than I expected. He stood beside me at the cemetery, his arm around my shoulders, whispering, "I'm here, Mom. You won't have to do anything alone." For a while, he kept that promise. He came by every Sunday after church. He fixed the garbage disposal when it jammed. He changed the batteries in the smoke detectors. He brought takeout when he knew I had been crying too much to cook. Sometimes he would sit in Michael's recliner by mistake, then apologize as if he had stepped on sacred ground. Back then, I still recognized my son. Then he married Rebecca. I do not blame every change in Ethan on his wife. A grown man makes his own choices. But I would be lying if I said the air did not shift after Rebecca became a Kingston. Rebecca was polished in a way I never was. Her nails were always perfect, her hair always styled, her voice sweet when other people listened. She worked in marketing for a real estate development company, and she had a way of looking at houses that made them feel less like homes and more like numbers on paper. The first time she walked through my house, she smiled and said, "This neighborhood has really appreciated." I remember laughing politely because I thought she was complimenting it. Later, I understood she was calculating. At first, Ethan still came over alone. Then he began bringing Rebecca. Then Rebecca began answering questions before he did. If I asked whether Ethan wanted coffee, she would say, "He's cutting back." If I asked whether they were staying for dinner, she would say, "We have plans." If I asked him how work was going, she would glance at him before he answered. I noticed these things, but I told myself not to be petty. A mother has to be careful after her son marries. Too much concern sounds like jealousy. Too much advice sounds like control. So I stayed kind. I invited her for Thanksgiving. I gave her Michael's mother's serving platter because she once said it was beautiful. I tried to love her because Ethan loved her. Then Ethan's business started failing. He had opened a small contracting company with a friend from college. At first, he was proud of it. He wore shirts with his company logo and talked about hiring crews, expanding bidding on bigger jobs. Michael would have been proud. I told Ethan that many times, but within 2 years, the excitement faded. His calls became shorter. His shoulders looked heavier. He stopped talking about new clients and started talking about delayed payments, bad partners, rising material costs, and temporary cash flow problems. The first time he asked me for money, he could barely look me in the eye. "Mom, I hate asking," he said, sitting across from me at the kitchen table. "It's just $5,000, just to cover payroll. I'll pay it back in 30 days. I gave it to him. Of course I did. He was my son. He paid back $1,000, then apologized, then said things were still tight. I told him not to worry. I told him family helped family. I told him his father would have done the same. The second time, it was $8,000. The third time, 12. By then, Rebecca no longer looked embarrassed. She sat beside him with a folder explaining numbers I did not ask to see. She used words like bridge loan equity, liquidity, leverage, words that made my simple savings account feel childish. "You have money just sitting," she said one afternoon, smiling as if she were doing me a favor. "At your age, Harold, you should be thinking about how to make your assets work for the family." The family. That was how it started. Not your money. Not your house. Not your future. The family. I told her the house was not an asset to me. It was my home. Rebecca's smile tightened. Ethan looked down at his coffee. A few weeks later, he brought it up again, gentler this time. "Mom, have you ever thought about downsizing?" I was folding dish towels at the kitchen counter when he said it. Such a harmless word. Downsizing. As if grief, memory, marriage, and safety could be packed into a smaller box. "No," I said. "You don't need this much space." "I know what I need," he sighed. "I'm not trying to upset you." "Then don't." His face changed, just for a second, a flash of irritation. Then it disappeared. After that, the comments came wrapped in concern. The stairs might be too much for me soon. The yard was expensive to maintain. The neighborhood taxes were rising. Senior communities had wonderful amenities. Rebecca knew a woman whose mother had sold at the perfect time and made a fortune. Each sentence sounded reasonable by itself. Together they formed a wall closing in around me. Still, I did not believe Ethan would hurt me. That is the foolish mercy of a mother's heart. It keeps making excuses long after the truth has started knocking. I told myself he was stressed. I told myself debt changes a person's tone. I told myself Rebecca was ambitious, not cruel. I told myself no son who had once brought me soup when I had the flu would ever look at the roof over my head and see only a solution to his problems. Then one Sunday evening, Ethan stayed behind after Rebecca went to the car. He stood in the doorway, turning his keys over in his hand. "Mom," he said softly, "where do you keep the deed to the house?" The question landed in my chest like a cold stone. I looked at him for a long moment. "Why?" He shrugged too quickly. "No reason. Just thinking we should make sure your papers are organized. You know, in case anything happens." In case anything happens. I had heard that phrase before. People used it when they wanted to sound responsible while reaching for something that was not theirs. I told him the papers were safe. He smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "Good. I just want to protect you." After he left, I stood alone in the hallway, listening to his car pull away. For the first time in years, my house did not feel quiet. It felt like it was holding its breath. The first strange thing happened on a Tuesday morning while I was wiping down the kitchen counters. Rebecca had come over without calling first. That alone was unusual. She was not the kind of woman who stopped by just to chat. Every visit from Rebecca had a purpose, even when she wrapped it in perfume and politeness. She stood in my kitchen wearing a cream-colored blazer holding 2 coffees from a cafe downtown. "I was in the neighborhood," she said, setting one on the counter. "Thought I'd check on you." I smiled because that was what I had been raised to do when someone brought coffee into your home. "That's kind of you." She looked around my kitchen, not with warmth, but with inspection. Her eyes moved from the cabinets to the back door, from the family photos on the wall, to the small desk where I kept my bills and mail stacked in neat piles. "You're still keeping everything on paper?" she asked. "Everything important, yes." Rebecca gave a little laugh. "Harold, it's not 1985 anymore." I dried my hands on a dish towel. Paper has never needed a password. Her smile thinned, but she kept her voice sweet. "I only mean, if something happened to you, Ethan would need to know where things are. Your account's insurance house documents, medical paperwork, all of it." There it was again. If something happened to you. People kept saying that phrase as if I were standing on the edge of a cliff. "I'm healthy," I said. "Of course you are," Rebecca replied too quickly. "But planning isn't about being unhealthy. It's about being responsible." I watched her lift one of the envelopes from my desk. It was not aggressive. Not exactly. But it was familiar, too familiar, the way someone touches something after deciding they have a right to it. "Please leave that," I said. She froze, then placed it down carefully. "I was only trying to help." That became Rebecca's favorite sentence. Whenever she crossed the line, she was only trying to help. A week later, Ethan called and asked if I would come with him to a doctor's appointment. "For me?" I asked. "No, Mom, for you?" I laughed because I thought he was teasing. He was not. "It's just a wellness check," he said, "and maybe a quick memory screening. Nothing serious." The word memory made my stomach tighten. "Ethan, I don't need a memory test." "I know," he said, "but you forgot where you put your reading glasses last Sunday." "They were on my head. Everyone does that." "And you called Mrs. Carter Evelyn's sister?" "Because her sister had just visited." He sighed long and tired, like I was being difficult. "Mom, please don't make this a big deal. Rebecca and I just want to make sure you're safe." Safe. Another word that sounded gentle until it became a leash. I agreed to the appointment because I wanted peace. That is another mistake older women make too often. We trade little pieces of our authority for peace, thinking the people we love will notice and stop asking. But some people only see surrender as permission to ask for more. At the clinic, Ethan answered questions that were meant for me. The nurse asked what medications I took. "I have her list," he said, pulling out his phone. The doctor asked whether I had fallen recently. "No," I answered. "She tripped on the porch last winter," Ethan added. "I slipped on ice," I said. "So did half the state of Ohio." The doctor smiled politely, but I noticed her eyes move between us. Then came the memory questions. What day was it? Who was the president? Repeat 3 words. Draw a clock. Count backward. I passed every question. At the end, the doctor said, "Mrs. Kingston appears cognitively sound. I don't see any concern based on today's screening." I expected Ethan to look relieved. Instead, he looked disappointed. Only for a second, but I saw it. On the drive home, he was quiet. "Well," I said, trying to lighten the mood, "I suppose my old brain still works." He forced a smile. That's good, Mom. But the warmth was missing. After that, Rebecca's questions became sharper. One afternoon, she came over with Ethan and brought a folder labeled Estate Planning. She placed it on my coffee table like a school assignment. We found some resources, she said. Just basic things. Power of attorney, living will, beneficiary forms. I have a will, I said. How old is it? Michael and I updated it years ago. Years ago isn't current. Ethan sat beside her, rubbing his hands together. Mom, nobody's trying to take anything from you, he said. It was a strange thing to say when I had not accused them. Rebecca opened the folder and slid a page toward me. You should consider giving Ethan durable power of attorney. It would make everything easier. Easier for whom? I asked. Her eyes lifted to mine. For the family. There was that phrase again. The family. I looked at my son. Do you think I need that? He did not answer right away. I think we need to be prepared. Prepared for what? For life, Rebecca said. For reality. I closed the folder and pushed it back across the table. I'm not signing anything today. Rebecca's jaw tightened. Ethan leaned forward. No one asked you to sign today. But I noticed he did not say no one would. That night, I went upstairs to the bedroom Michael and I had shared for decades. His side of the closet still held 3 of his jackets. I knew some people would say that was unhealthy, but grief does not follow a cleaning schedule. Sometimes a jacket hanging in a closet is not denial. Sometimes it is the last shape of comfort a woman has left. In the bottom drawer of Michael's old dresser, beneath folded handkerchiefs and a watch that no longer ticked, I kept a small fireproof lockbox. Inside were the documents that mattered. The deed, insurance papers, our marriage certificate, Michael's death certificate, a copy of the will. The trust documents I had not looked at closely since his lawyer helped us prepare them. I checked the box that night. Everything seemed to be there. Still, I had the oddest feeling someone else had touched it. The papers were stacked differently. Not messy, not obviously disturbed, but not the way I left them. I had spent years as a librarian. I remembered order. I remembered corners. I remembered the weight of a folder placed exactly where my own hands had put it. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then 3 days later, I came home early from the grocery store. Rebecca's car was in my driveway. I had not invited her. When I stepped inside, the house was quiet except for the faint creak of floorboards upstairs. Rebecca, I called. A pause, then hurried footsteps. She appeared at the top of the stairs, holding her phone in one hand. Oh, she said. You scared me. What are you doing upstairs? She smiled, but her cheeks had gone pink. Ethan asked me to grab his old tax folder from the guest room. Ethan's tax folder isn't upstairs. Her smile did not move. I must have misunderstood him. I walked slowly up the stairs, my grocery bags still hanging from my wrist. When I reached the bedroom, I saw one drawer of Michael's dresser not fully closed. A cold feeling moved through me. Rebecca stepped in front of it. I didn't want to bother you, she said. You always get so emotional about Michael's things. The words struck harder than they should have, not because they were loud, because they were careless. I moved past her and opened the drawer. The handkerchiefs were shifted. The lockbox was still there, but turned backward. I looked at Rebecca. She looked at me. For 1 second, neither of us pretended. Then she gave a soft laugh. Harold, please don't look at me like that. I was just trying to help organize. You had no right to come into this room. Her face hardened. I am your son's wife. This was my husband's room. It is a room in a house Ethan will one day inherit. I felt my breath stop. She must have realized she had said too much because her expression changed quickly. I mean, eventually, she added. Someday, that's all. I did not argue. I did not shout. I simply walked her to the door. After she left, I locked the deadbolt and stood with my back against it. My hands were trembling. That evening, Ethan called. Mom, Rebecca said you were rude to her. I stared at the phone in disbelief. She was in my bedroom. She was looking for papers. What papers? Just old tax stuff. Why didn't you ask me? He went quiet. Then he said, because every simple thing becomes emotional with you. There it was. The new tone, not concern, accusation. I sat down slowly at the kitchen table. Ethan, I said, why is your wife interested in my documents? He exhaled sharply. Mom, don't start. Answer me. Because someone has to think ahead. I am not dead. I didn't say you were. No, but lately you both talk like you're waiting for it. Silence. Then his voice dropped. That's a terrible thing to say. Maybe it was, but it was also true. After he hung up, I went back upstairs and opened the lockbox again. This time, I removed every document and spread them across the bed. I checked each page. I checked every signature. I checked every date. Nothing appeared missing. But tucked between the old property tax records, I found something I did not recognize. A sticky note. Not mine. On it, written in Rebecca's neat handwriting, were 3 words, "Need original signature." I sat on the edge of the bed until the room grew dark. That was the night I stopped feeling foolish for being suspicious. That was the night I understood my home was not just full of memories anymore. It was full of danger. The appointment at the notary's office did not begin with fear. That is what makes betrayal so dangerous. It does not always come wearing a cruel face. Sometimes it arrives in your son's familiar car with soft music playing on the radio while he tells you he just needs one quick signature to fix a roof. It was a Friday afternoon when Ethan called. Mom, he said, his voice unusually bright. I got some good news. I was sitting in the living room hemming a curtain I had been meaning to fix for months. The house was quiet except for the ticking clock over the mantel. What kind of good news? I found a way to handle the roof repairs without you having to dip into your savings. I looked toward the ceiling as if I could see through it to the shingles above. The roof did need work. Michael had always handled those things before. Since his passing, every home repair felt bigger than it should have. What way? I asked. Just a small home improvement loan, Ethan said. Nothing major. The bank needs your signature because the house is in your name. My hand tightened around the needle. Ethan, I don't want a loan on my house. It's not like that, he said quickly. It's just a repair arrangement, more like authorization. Rebecca knows someone who helped us understand it. Of course Rebecca did. I'd rather speak to the bank myself. There was a pause, then his tone softened. Mom, I already did most of the legwork for you. I know paperwork makes you anxious. I was trying to take something off your plate. I hated that sentence because part of me wanted to believe it. I wanted my son to still be the boy who once shoveled Mrs. Carter's walkway without being asked. I wanted him to be the man who had promised at his father's grave that I would not be alone. What exactly am I signing? I asked. Just documents allowing the repair loan process to move forward. A notary has to verify your identity, that's all. A notary? Yes, it's routine. Routine. That word did what it was meant to do. It made danger sound boring. I should have said no. Instead, I said, send me copies first. I would, but the appointment is today. They had a cancellation. If we don't take it, we may have to wait weeks, and you know the rain we've been getting. He gave a small laugh, as if we were only discussing weather. My eyes moved to the hallway, to the framed photograph of Michael and me, standing on the porch, the year Ethan graduated high school. Michael's hand rested proudly on the railing he had built. That porch had been his favorite place in the world. "All right," I said finally. "But I am reading every page before I sign." "Of course, Mom." His answer came too fast. That should have warned me. An hour later, Ethan pulled into my driveway in his dark gray pickup truck. Rebecca sat in the passenger seat. She did not get out right away. She watched me lock the front door, her sunglasses covering her eyes, though the day was cloudy. Ethan stepped out and kissed my cheek. "You look nice," he said. I was wearing a navy cardigan over a white blouse, the pearl earrings Michael had bought me for our 30th anniversary, and sensible shoes. Not fancy, but I had dressed carefully. There is something about official offices that makes a woman from my generation want to look respectable, even when she has done nothing wrong. Rebecca lowered her window. "Ready, Harold?" Her voice was cheerful, but her mouth was tight. On the drive downtown, she talked more than usual. She mentioned traffic. She mentioned a new restaurant near the river. She mentioned how nice it would be once the house repairs were handled. I sat in the back seat, looking at the passing streets of Columbus, and feeling the unease from the past few weeks return like a hand pressing against my chest. "Ethan," I said, "which bank is this through?" He glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "It's connected to the contractor's financing." "What contractor?" "The one I told you about." "You didn't tell me his name." Rebecca turned slightly. "Harold, all of that will be in the documents." "Then I'll read it there." Her smile vanished for half a second. The notary's office was in a small brick building between an insurance agency and a tax preparation service. The sign on the glass door read, "Susan Walker, Notary Public and Document Services." Inside the waiting area smelled faintly of printer ink and lavender air freshener. There were 3 chairs, a small table with magazines and framed certificates on the wall. A woman in her late 50s stepped out from behind a partition holding a file folder. She had silver-streaked brown hair, kind eyes, and the professional calm of someone who had spent years watching people sign important things. "Mrs. Kingston?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I'm Susan Walker." She shook my hand first. Not Ethan's, not Rebecca's, mine. For some reason, that small courtesy steadied me. "We'll be in the conference room," Susan said. The room was modest with a rectangular table, 4 chairs, a computer, and a scanner. Ethan pulled out a chair for me. Rebecca sat close to him. Too close, like they had rehearsed being united. Susan placed the file on the table. "Before we begin, I need to confirm identification." I handed her my Ohio driver's license. She studied it carefully, then looked at me. She wrote something down. "Thank you." Then she opened the file. The first few pages looked ordinary enough at a glance, though the language was thick and formal. My name appeared several times, Harold Kingston. My address, parcel numbers, legal descriptions, references to authority and authorization. I reached for the top page. Rebecca's hand moved slightly, almost as if to stop me. Susan noticed. So did I. "I'd like to read these," I said. "Of course," Susan replied immediately. "You should never sign anything you haven't read." Ethan gave a nervous little chuckle. "Mom always reads everything." "No harm in that," Susan said. I lowered my eyes to the page. The first paragraph did mention repairs, but the second paragraph mentioned authority to act on behalf of owner. The third mentioned transfer assignment and future interest. Words that did not belong in a simple roof repair. My mouth went dry. "Ethan," I said, "why does this say transfer?" He leaned forward. "It's legal wording, Mom. Standard stuff." Susan looked up from another page. Mr. Kingston, she said evenly, please allow your mother to ask her questions. The room went still. Rebecca shifted in her chair. I turned another page. There were signature lines at the bottom. One for me, one for the notary. Another section referred to a previously executed power of attorney. My heartbeat changed. I never signed a power of attorney, I said. Ethan's face lost color. Rebecca spoke first. You may have forgotten. It was probably part of the estate papers. No, I said. I did not forget. Susan had stopped moving. She was staring at the document in front of her, not at me, not at Ethan, not at Rebecca. Her expression had changed. It was subtle, but I saw it. The professional calm remained, but something behind her eyes sharpened. She turned one page back, then another. She opened a drawer beside her, removed a thin folder, and compared the papers side by side. Ethan cleared his throat. Is there a problem? Susan did not answer. She looked at my driver's license again. Then she looked at me. Then she looked down at the older document in her folder. Mrs. Kingston, she said quietly, may I ask you to sign your name on this blank sheet of paper? Rebecca sat up straighter. Why is that necessary? Susan's eyes did not leave mine. Because I need to verify something. I picked up the pen. My hand was steady, though my heart was not. I wrote my name the way I had written it for 50 years. Harold Kingston. Susan took the paper. She placed it beside the signature on the supposed power of attorney. I saw the difference before she said a word. The signature on that document was too smooth, too tall, too slanted. It had the shape of my name, but none of my hand. It looked like someone had practiced being me and failed. A strange silence filled the room. Ethan whispered, "This is ridiculous." Rebecca snapped, "There must be some mistake." Susan closed the folder slowly. Then she looked directly at my son. "I'm sorry," she said. "I can't notarize this." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Why not?" Susan's voice stayed calm, but there was steel beneath it. "Because I have reason to believe there is a serious irregularity with the prior signature attached to this transaction." The word irregularity was polite, but everyone in that room knew what she meant. I looked at Ethan. My son would not look back. In that moment, the office seemed to shrink around me. The walls, the table, the papers, the lavender smell, Rebecca's sharp breathing, Ethan's frozen face, all of it pressed in. Then Susan turned to me with something like pity in her eyes. "Mrs. Kingston," she said, "before we go any further, I need to ask you one question." My voice barely came out. "What question?" She touched the forged paper with one finger. "Did you really sign this?" And suddenly, the danger in my house had a name. For a few seconds, no one in that little conference room moved. Susan Walker's question seemed to hang above the table like a storm cloud. "Did you really sign this?" I looked down at the paper again. The signature was mine and not mine. My name was there, yes, but it felt like seeing your own face in a photograph where the eyes belonged to someone else. The letters were too smooth. The K in Kingston leaned too far forward. The H in Harold was missing the slight tremble I had developed after arthritis settled into my fingers. Whoever wrote it had copied the idea of my signature, not the truth of it. "No," I said. My voice was small, but the word landed hard. Ethan shifted in his chair. Rebecca's hand went to his wrist under the table, but I saw it. Susan did too. "No," I repeated stronger this time. "I did not sign that." Susan nodded once slowly, as if she had expected the answer, but needed to hear it from me. Then I cannot proceed with this notarization. Ethan leaned forward, his face flushed. Hold on. You can't just accuse people because of a handwriting difference. I have not accused anyone, Susan said calmly. I said I cannot notarize this document. But you implied it, Rebecca snapped. Susan turned to her. Mrs. Kingston, I am required to verify identity, willingness, and awareness before notarizing. I am also required to refuse if I have reason to believe a document may involve fraud, coercion, or improper execution. Rebecca laughed sharply. Fraud? That's a serious word. So is signature? Susan replied. The quiet that followed was colder than shouting. I stared at Ethan, waiting for him to look offended on my behalf, waiting for him to turn to his wife and say, Rebecca, what is going on? Waiting for him to take my hand to say, Mom, we will fix this. Waiting for my son to appear. But he sat there, with his mouth tight and his eyes lowered. That silence told me more than any confession could have. Susan slid the questionable document toward me, stopping before it reached my hands. This appears to be a power of attorney form dated 3 weeks ago, she said. According to this copy, you granted your son authority to act in certain financial and property matters. I never signed any power of attorney, I said. Ethan finally looked up. Mom, maybe you don't remember. The words struck me so hard, I almost forgot to breathe. Not because he had said them, because he had practiced them. I heard the smoothness in his voice, the careful sadness, the tone of a man pretending to be worried while building a cage around an older woman. I remember everything that matters, I said. Rebecca leaned back in her chair and crossed her arms. This is exactly why we were trying to get things organized. You get upset, then you deny conversations that already happened. What conversation? I asked. The one about letting Ethan help you. I agreed to let my son help me clean gutters, I said, not take legal control of my house. Ethan's jaw tightened. Nobody is taking your house. Susan's eyes moved to the stack of documents in front of her. Mr. Kingston, she said, the document presented today references the prior power of attorney and appears to authorize a transfer of property-related authority. Ethan's face hardened. It's legal wording. You said the same thing in the car, I whispered. He turned to me then, and for a second, I saw irritation break through the mask. Because it is legal wording, Mom. Then why didn't you explain it before we came here? Rebecca answered for him. Because you panic over everything. I looked at her and remembered the drawer in Michael's dresser. The lockbox turned backward, the sticky note hidden among my papers. Need original signature. My whole body went cold. Susan closed the file and placed both hands flat on top of it. I want to be very clear, she said. Nothing will be notarized today. Rebecca stood so abruptly, her chair scraped the floor. This is ridiculous. We should go somewhere else. Susan did not flinch. You are free to seek services elsewhere. However, I will be documenting my refusal in my notary journal. Rebecca froze. Ethan looked at her. There it was again, that quick flash between them. Not confusion, not surprise, fear. What do you mean, documenting? Ethan asked. I record every notarial act and every refusal when appropriate, Susan said, especially when there is a concern involving identity willingness or signature inconsistency. Rebecca's voice lowered. You don't need to make this dramatic. I am not making it dramatic, Susan said. I am making it accurate. I sat there listening, my palms damp against my skirt. A part of me wanted to disappear. Another part of me wanted to stand on the table and scream, but grief shock and old manners held me still. I was raised not to cause scenes. That day, I learned some people count on that. "Susan," I said quietly, "how did this document get here?" She looked at Ethan and Rebecca before answering me. "This copy was included in the packet submitted for today's appointment." "Submitted by whom?" Ethan spoke quickly. "The financing office sent it." Susan's eyebrows drew together slightly. "The appointment was scheduled by Mrs. Rebecca Kingston." My head turned. Rebecca lifted her chin. "I made a phone call. So, what, Ethan was busy? And who provided the documents?" I asked. Rebecca's lips parted, then closed. "Ethan said we both gathered them." "From where?" "Mom." "From where, Ethan?" His face darkened. "From your house. From the papers you already had." "We were trying to help." I felt as if the floor had tilted beneath me. My house. My drawers. My private records. Michael's papers. "You went through my things." Rebecca scoffed. "That is not the issue right now." "It is exactly the issue," I said. My voice did not shake anymore. Susan watched me carefully, and I think she understood something my own son had forgotten. I was not fragile. I was wounded. "There is a difference." Ethan rubbed his forehead. "Mom, please. This is getting out of hand." "No," I said. "It got out of hand when my name appeared on a legal document I never signed." Rebecca's eyes sharpened. "You should be careful before saying that." I looked at her for a long moment. "Why? Because someone else should be worried." Her face changed, just slightly, but enough. Susan stood. "I think it would be best to end this meeting now." Ethan rose too, forcing a tight smile. "Fine. We'll sort this out later." He reached for the folder. Susan placed her hand on it first. "I'll retain the copy that was submitted to my office." Rebecca said, "That belongs to us." "No," Susan said. "This belongs to my notarial record." Ethan stared at her, and for the first time that day, his polite mask slipped completely. "You are making a mistake." Susan met his stare. "Then it will be a well-documented one." I stood slowly, using the edge of the table for balance. My knees felt weak, but not from age, from realization. My son had not made a misunderstanding. He had brought me into a room where he expected me to sign away something I did not understand, and when the notary stopped him, he was not relieved. He was angry. That was the moment my heart broke in a new place. Not the place where Michael's death had broken it. Not the place where loneliness lived. This was deeper. This was the place where a mother keeps her child's first steps, first fever, first school drawing, first apology, first, "I love you." And now, right beside those memories, there was a forged signature. Outside the office, Ethan walked ahead of me. Rebecca stayed close to his side, whispering fast. I stopped on the sidewalk. "Ethan." He turned impatient. "What? Did you know?" His face went still. The traffic moved behind him. A horn sounded somewhere down the street. Rebecca looked away. "Did you know my signature was on that paper?" I asked. He swallowed. "Mom, let's not do this here." That was not no. I nodded slowly, though nothing inside me felt calm. "Take me home." The drive back was silent. No one mentioned the roof. No one mentioned the loan. No one mentioned the word fraud. When Ethan pulled into my driveway, I opened the door before he could speak. "Mom," he said, "we need to talk." I looked at the house Michael had promised would always protect me. Then I looked at my son. "No," I said. "Now I need to think." I went inside alone and locked the door behind me. For the first time in my life, I locked it against my own child. That night, I did not sleep. I sat at my kitchen table until the darkness outside turned thin and gray, with every light in the house burning, as if brightness could keep betrayal from entering. The folder Susan had refused to notarize was not in my hands, but I could still see it. I could still see that false version of my name lying on the table like a stranger wearing my clothes. A forged signature, my signature. My son had sat there while another person questioned whether I had truly signed away power over my own home, and he had not looked shocked. He had looked trapped. That was the part I could not stop replaying. If Ethan had been innocent, he would have been furious for me. If Ethan had been confused, he would have demanded answers from Rebecca. If Ethan had been the son I remembered, he would have driven me home and stayed on the porch until I believed him. Instead, he had said, "Maybe you don't remember." Those 4 words became a knife I kept turning in my own chest. The next morning, I made coffee, but forgot to drink it. I walked from room to room, touching things as if I needed proof that they still belonged to me. The hallway table Michael refinished one winter. The quilt my mother stitched before her hands gave out. The brass lamp Ethan knocked over when he was 8, and then cried because he thought his father would be angry. I stopped in the doorway of the living room and looked at Michael's photograph on the mantel. "What did I miss?" I whispered. Of course, the photo did not answer. But Michael had always been better at silence than most people were at talking. By 9 o'clock, I went upstairs. The bedroom felt different now. Not sacred, violated. I opened Michael's dresser again. This time, I did not let grief slow my hands. I took out the lockbox, carried it downstairs, and placed it on the kitchen table. The metal felt cold beneath my fingers. Inside were the documents I had trusted for years simply because they were there. The deed, the insurance records, our old tax returns, Michael's death certificate, the will, the trust documents. I spread them across the table in neat rows. My librarian habits returned automatically dates in order categories, separated official seals facing up. If someone had touched these papers, I wanted to see what they had looked for. At first, everything seemed ordinary. Then I noticed the copy. It was tucked between 2 property tax statements from years earlier. A single photocopied page folded twice. I knew immediately I had not placed it there. I never folded legal papers. Michael used to tease me about it. "Harold," he would say, "you treat documents better than some people treat relatives." I unfolded the page. At the top were the words, "Durable power of attorney." My mouth went dry. I read slowly, line by line, though the language blurred in places. The document claimed I had appointed Ethan Kingston as my agent, giving him authority over certain financial decisions, property matters, banking access, and real estate transactions. My eyes dropped to the bottom. There it was again. My name, not written by me. Beside it was a date from 3 weeks earlier. 3 weeks earlier, I had been home all day with a sinus headache. I remembered because Evelyn Carter had brought me chicken soup and a small container of peach cobbler. I had not gone to any office. I had not signed any legal paper. I had not given Ethan permission to control a single penny, much less the house Michael and I had built our life inside. Beneath the signature line, there was a notary section, but it was incomplete. No stamp, no official seal, no valid notarization, just a blank space where legitimacy had been expected to appear. My hands trembled so badly I had to place the page flat against the table. Then I saw something else, a small printed note in the corner. Copy for lender review. Lender, not roof repair, not contractor financing. Lender. I stood too quickly, and the chair scraped against the floor. I went to the desk in the corner of the kitchen where I kept mail bills, church bulletins, and old birthday cards I could never throw away. I sorted through everything from the past month: electric bill, grocery circular, Medicare summary, church newsletter, insurance notice. Then beneath a stack of coupons, I found an envelope I did not recognize. It was from a bank I had never used. Buckeye Heritage Lending. The envelope had been opened, not by me. My name and address were printed clearly on the front. Inside was a letter thanking me for my recent inquiry regarding home equity options. I had to sit down. Home equity. Those two words made the entire room spin. Michael and I had paid off this house one careful month at a time. We had sacrificed vacations, new furniture, dinners out, and sometimes even little comforts, so that in old age we would owe no one for the roof above us. And now my son had been circling that roof like it was cash, waiting to be cut open. I read the letter 3 times. It mentioned a pending review, required documentation, proof of authority, property valuation, and title verification. It did not say a loan had been finalized, but it said enough. Enough to make me understand that the forged power of attorney was not an isolated paper. It was a key, and someone had tried to use it to open the door to my house. I gathered the documents into a folder, then stopped and looked toward the hallway closet. The old fireproof box was not the only place Michael had kept papers. Years before he died, he had started using a larger storage bin in the upstairs closet. He called it the boring box. It held appliance manuals, warranty papers, old receipts, and things he insisted might matter someday. I had not touched it since the funeral. I climbed the stairs slowly, one hand on the rail. At the top, I opened the closet and pulled down the gray plastic bin. Dust rose from the lid. My knees complained as I carried it to the bedroom floor. Inside were the ordinary leftovers of a shared life. Instruction manuals for a dishwasher we no longer owned. Receipts for paint. An envelope of old photos. A yellow folder labeled house. My heart beat faster. I opened it. Inside were copies of the deed, county tax assessments, home insurance records, and several letters from Daniel Brooks, the attorney Michael had used years ago when he insisted we get our affairs in order. At the time, I had found it depressing. Michael had found it necessary. One envelope was sealed. My name was written on the front in Michael's handwriting. For Harold, if questions ever come up about the house. I stared at the words until my eyes filled. Michael's handwriting had always leaned slightly to the right, impatient but clear. Seeing it again felt like hearing his voice from another room. I slid my finger under the flap and opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a short note. My dear Harold, if you are reading this, something must have made you uncertain about the house. Do not let anyone rush you. Do not let anyone tell you memory is the same as confusion. The house is protected through the trust Daniel prepared. You are the one with authority while you are living and able. Ethan cannot sell it, borrow against it, or transfer it without your direct consent. If anyone pressures you, call Daniel Brooks. I sat on the floor with the letter in my lap and cried. Not softly, not gracefully. I cried with the kind of sound that comes from a place you did not know was still breakable. Michael had known me better than anyone. He knew I trusted too long. He knew I gave too much. He knew that when Ethan asked, my first instinct would be to help, not question. Had he suspected our son, I did not want to believe that. Maybe he had simply understood life. Maybe after years of repairing hospital equipment and watching families fall apart over money. He knew that grief, age, and property made dangerous combinations. I read his note again. Do not let anyone rush you. Do not let anyone tell you memory is the same as confusion. Those words steadied me more than any comforting speech could have. I spent the rest of the afternoon making copies. At the public library where I had worked for many years, I used the copier like I was preparing evidence for battle. The young woman at the desk asked if I needed help, and I almost said yes, not because I could not work the machine, but because I wanted someone kind to stand beside me while I faced what my family had become. Instead, I smiled and said, "I'm fine, sweetheart." But I was not fine. I was organized. There is a difference. I copied the fake power of attorney, the bank letter, Michael's note, the trust summary, the deed, every page that carried either danger or protection. When I came home, there was a voicemail waiting. Ethan. "Mom, it's me. We need to stop letting that notary woman scare you. Rebecca and I talked, and we think it would be best if I came over tomorrow so we can go through everything together. Please don't call anyone else before we talk. This is family business." This is family business. I played the message twice, then I deleted it. Not because I wanted to erase my son, because I wanted to erase his permission to command me. That evening, I placed every copied document into a clean folder and wrote Daniel Brooks across the front. My hand still trembled, but my mind did not. Before I went to bed, I checked every lock in the house. Front door, back door, porch door, basement window. Then I went upstairs, placed Michael's letter in the drawer beside my bed, and sat in the dark. For the first time since Susan had asked about that forged signature, I felt something stronger than fear. I felt warned. I felt protected. And somewhere beneath the heartbreak, I felt the first small spark of anger. Not wild anger. Not foolish anger. The kind of anger that finally tells an old woman she is not helpless just because someone has decided she should be. Ethan came the next morning at 10. I knew he would, because my son had always believed that silence meant a door was still open. When he was little, if I told him no dessert before dinner, he would wait 5 minutes, smile sweetly, and ask again. Back then, it was charming. Now standing in my kitchen with a folder full of copied evidence hidden in the bottom drawer beside the dish towels, I understood how dangerous persistence could become when love no longer guided it. I heard his truck before I saw it. The low rumble rolled into the driveway, then stopped. A door opened. Another door opened. Rebecca had come too. I stood at the kitchen sink and looked out the window as they walked toward the porch. Ethan wore jeans and a navy jacket, his face tight with the kind of forced calm people wear when they have decided they are right before they even begin speaking. Rebecca wore a gray coat, carrying her leather purse against her ribs like a shield. The doorbell rang. I did not rush. That was the first small victory of the day. For years, whenever Ethan came over, I hurried to the door. I opened it, smiling. I asked if he had eaten. I made coffee before he asked. I treated every visit like a blessing, because after Michael died, my son's footsteps on the porch made the house feel less empty. But that morning, I wiped my hands slowly on a towel. I walked through the hallway at my own pace. I looked through the small glass panel beside the door. Ethan saw me and lifted one hand. "Mom, open up." Not please. Not are you all right, open up. I unlocked the door but left the chain on. His eyes dropped to it. "Seriously? Good morning, Ethan." Rebecca looked at the chain and gave a small laugh. "This is unnecessary. Many things have become necessary lately." Ethan's face tightened. "Mom, let us in. We need to talk like adults." I almost smiled at that. Adults. As if age had suddenly become useful to him only when he wanted to scold me. I removed the chain and stepped back. They entered as if the house already belonged to them. That was the thought that struck me. Ethan did not look around with love. Rebecca did not glance at the family pictures with fondness. They moved through my hallway with impatience, like buyers inspecting a property before closing. I led them to the kitchen. No coffee waited on the table. Rebecca noticed. Ethan did too. He cleared his throat. Mom yesterday got out of hand. I sat down across from them. Yes, it did. I'm glad you see that. I don't think we mean the same thing. Rebecca leaned forward, folding her hands. Harold, we need to be practical. That notary overreacted. She saw one signature and turned it into some kind of crime scene. It was not my signature. Ethan sighed and rubbed his eyes. Mom, do not say I forgot. His mouth closed. The silence that followed felt like a test. Rebecca broke it. No one is attacking your memory. You scheduled a memory screening for me. Because we care. You went through my bedroom. Because your documents were scattered. They were inside a lockbox. Her eyes flickered, only for a moment, but there it was. Proof that she remembered exactly what she had touched. Ethan set both hands on the table. Mom, please, this is what I'm talking about. You're taking innocent things and twisting them. I looked at him, really looked at him. He had Michael's eyes. That was the cruelest part. Same brown, same shape, same little crease near the corner when he frowned. But Michael's eyes had always softened when I was hurt. Ethan's only hardened. I found the copy, I said. Rebecca went still. Ethan blinked. What copy? The power of attorney. His hands moved off the table. I watched him carefully. It was remarkable how much a person could confess without a single word. His shoulders shifted. His jaw worked. His eyes moved just once toward Rebecca. Then he said, Where did you find it? Not what power of attorney. Not I don't know what you mean. Where did you find it? I felt something inside me settle. In my own house, I said. Rebecca inhaled sharply. You were looking through papers. I stared at her. My papers. She looked away first. Ethan leaned back. Okay, fine. Maybe there was a draft. A draft with my forged signature? It wasn't forged. I felt the room change. Even Rebecca turned toward him quickly. Ethan seemed to realize what he had said because he raised a hand. I mean, maybe it was prepared for you to sign. It had my name written on it. People prepare documents all the time. Who wrote my name, Ethan? He stood up. The chair scraped the floor. Why are you doing this? I almost laughed, but it would have sounded like crying. Why am I doing this? Yes? He snapped. Why are you acting like we're criminals after everything I've done for you? There it was, the old debt collector's song, everything I've done for you. As if love kept a ledger, as if every fixed sink, every grocery bag carried inside every phone call after Michael died had been a down payment on my silence. You are my son, I said. You are not an employee earning shares. His face flushed. Rebecca touched his arm. Ethan. No, he said, shaking her off. I'm tired of being treated like some stranger. I'm the one who comes when something breaks. I'm the one who gets the calls when she's scared. I'm the one who's supposed to handle everything when she can't. When I can't, I repeated. He pointed toward the ceiling. Mom, look at this place. It's too much for you. The stairs, the yard, the repairs, the taxes. You don't need a whole house anymore. The sentence hit exactly where he meant it to. Not because it was new, because now he said it without wrapping paper. I looked around my kitchen, the blue curtains I had sewn, the worn table where Ethan had done homework, the tiny burn mark from the year Michael tried to flam bananas and nearly set a dish towel on fire. This house is my home, I said. It's an asset, Rebecca said. My eyes moved to her. She did not even pretend to regret it. An asset, I repeated. Yes, a valuable one, and right now it's sitting here while Ethan is drowning. Ethan closed his eyes briefly. So there it was. Drowning. Not struggling, not tight. Drowning. What happened? I asked. Ethan looked at the wall. Rebecca answered because she always answered when truth required too much humility from him. The business took a hit. How big? That isn't the point. How big, Ethan? He turned back to me, and for the first time I saw fear beneath the anger.
Big enough. Did you take out loans?
He said nothing.
Did you use my information?
No. Too quick. Rebecca stood.
This interrogation is disgusting. What is disgusting?
I said, rising slowly, is finding my name on a legal document I never signed. Ethan's voice cracked through the room.
We were trying to save everything.
I froze. Everything. Not me. Not my home. Everything. His business. His pride. His marriage. His image. Rebecca's face had gone pale. Ethan ran a hand through his hair. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, I said softly. You did. He lowered his voice. Mom, you don't understand the pressure I'm under. No, I said. You don't understand the grief I live with. His eyes flicked toward Michael's photograph on the small shelf near the doorway. Don't bring Dad into this. This house is full of your father. He's gone? The words exploded out of him. The kitchen went silent. Ethan looked instantly ashamed, but not enough to take it back. I stood very still. Rebecca's lips pressed together, but she did not comfort him. She was watching me, measuring how much damage his outburst had done. Yes, I said. He is gone, and this house is what he left to make sure I was safe. Ethan swallowed hard. Mom, I am trying to keep us from losing everything. By making me lose mine, you would still be taken care of. Where? He hesitated. Rebecca stepped in voice smooth again. There are beautiful senior living communities, safe ones, social ones. You wouldn't have to worry about maintenance. I looked at my son. You discussed putting me in senior living. It's not a prison, Ethan said. No, but it is a place you chose for me while standing in the kitchen I paid for. He flinched. Good. Some words should hurt. Some words. I walked to the drawer, opened it, and took out the folder with Daniel Brooks' name on the front. I did not open it. I simply placed it on the table. Rebecca read the name. Her expression changed. Ethan stared at it. What's that? He asked. My next step. His face hardened again. You called a lawyer. Not yet. The lie was small. I had not called Daniel yet, only prepared to. But I wanted to see what the possibility did to them. Rebecca's voice dropped. Harold bringing lawyers into family matters is a mistake. So is bringing forged signatures into family matters. Ethan slammed his palm on the table. Stop saying that! The sound echoed through the kitchen. For 1 second, I saw the little boy who used to slam doors when he could not have his way. Then I saw the grown man who had become dangerous because no one had taught him that desperation did not excuse betrayal. I picked up the folder and held it against my chest. You need to leave. Mom. Both of you. Rebecca grabbed her purse. Fine, come on, Ethan. She wants to play victim. I looked at her. No, Rebecca, I am finally refusing to be one. Ethan stood there breathing hard. At the doorway, he turned back. You are making a huge mistake. I looked at the son I had loved longer than he had known how to speak. No, I said. I made my mistake when I believed love meant leaving every door unlocked. He walked out without kissing my cheek. Rebecca followed without saying goodbye. When the door closed, I locked it. Then I leaned my forehead against the wood and let myself shake. Not because I was weak, because I had just watched my son choose his need over my safety. And no mother survives that without trembling. The house was too quiet after Ethan and Rebecca left. Not peaceful quiet. Not the soft kind that settles after supper when dishes are washed and the day finally loosens its grip. This was a hollow quiet, the kind that makes every familiar room feel like it is listening. I stood in the kitchen for a long time with Daniel Brooks' name written across the folder in my hand. My son had yelled in that room. My daughter-in-law had called my home an asset. And somewhere in between those two things, something inside me changed. I was still Ethan's mother. That could not be erased. But I was no longer only his mother. I was also a woman with a deed, a trust, a dead husband's warning, and a forged signature, carrying my name into places I had never gone. I called Daniel Brooks at 11:42 that morning. I remember the time because I stared at the clock while the phone rang, wondering whether calling a lawyer against my own child made me a terrible mother or simply a late-blooming sensible woman. A receptionist answered, "Brooks and Whitman Legal Services." "My name is Harold Kingston," I said. "My husband Michael Kingston worked with Mr. Brooks years ago regarding our house and trust. I need to speak with him." There was a pause. "Is this urgent, Mrs. Kingston?" I looked at the folder on the table. "Yes," I said. "I believe someone may have forged my signature." The receptionist's voice changed immediately. "Please hold." While I waited, I looked at Michael's photograph near the doorway. He had been gone for years, but in that moment, I felt almost embarrassed, as if I were admitting to him that I had nearly failed to protect what he had worked so hard to secure. But then I remembered his note. "Do not let anyone rush you." When Daniel Brooks came on the line, his voice was older than I remembered, but still steady. "Mrs. Kingston, this is Daniel Brooks. I remember Michael well. Tell me what's happened." There are moments in life when speaking the truth feels like breaking a window. Once the glass is shattered, you cannot pretend the room is still sealed. I told him everything. The doctor's appointment, Rebecca in my bedroom, the sticky note, the notary office, the forged power of attorney, the bank letter, Ethan's confrontation. Daniel did not interrupt. That alone made me want to cry. Everyone else had been telling me what I meant, what I forgot, what I misunderstood. Daniel simply listened. When I finished, he said, "Mrs. Kingston, do not sign anything. Do not give Ethan or Rebecca access to any original documents, and do not meet with them alone again." The seriousness in his voice settled over me like a coat. "I have copies," I said. "The originals are still here."
Good. I want you to bring them to my office, but I also want to contact the notary.
What was her name?
Susan Walker. I know Susan, he said. She's careful. She stopped the signing. Then she may have saved your house. I closed my eyes. There it was. The sentence I had been afraid to form. Saved your house. Because the house had truly been in danger. Daniel scheduled me for the next morning. Before we hung up, he asked whether I felt safe staying home. I almost said yes automatically. Then I looked toward the front door. "I don't know," I admitted. "Do you have a trusted neighbor? Evelyn Carter, across the street. Tell her what you can. Make sure someone knows. And if Ethan or Rebecca tries to force entry, call the police." Police. The word made my stomach turn. Not because I feared them, because no mother imagines hearing herself discuss calling police on her son. After the call, I sat motionless for several minutes. Then I gathered the folder, locked the originals in a different place, and walked across the street to Evelyn's house. Evelyn Carter was 74, widowed, sharp as a sewing needle, and kind in the way women become kind after life has taken enough from them to make them notice pain quickly. She opened the door wearing a red cardigan and holding pruning shears. "Harold, honey, you look like you saw a ghost." I tried to smile. "I think I saw something worse." She brought me inside without another question. Evelyn's kitchen smelled like cinnamon and lemon soap. I had sat there many times over the years drinking tea, talking about church weather aches prescriptions, and the strange loneliness of outliving the person who knew you best. But that day, the words that came out of me were not ordinary neighbor words. I told her that Ethan had been pressuring me about the house. I told her there was a forged signature. I told her I had called a lawyer. I did not tell every detail. Shame still held some pieces tight, but Evelyn heard enough. When I finished, she reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. "Listen to me," she said. "Do not make the mistake of thinking blood makes theft less serious." I swallowed hard. "He's my son." "Then he should have known better than anyone where not to cut you." That broke something open in me. I cried quietly, the way older women often cry, with one hand pressed under the nose and the other trying to make it stop. Evelyn did not hush me. She did not say everything would be fine. She simply sat with me until the first wave passed. Then she stood up and reached for a notepad. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Writing down my phone number again, even though you already have it. Tape it by your door. If anything feels wrong, you call me, day or night." "Evelyn?" "No arguing. I've been waiting 10 years for a good reason to use the baseball bat my grandson left in the garage." Despite everything, I laughed. It felt strange, almost disloyal to laugh with my life cracking apart. But maybe laughter is one way the soul checks whether it is still alive. When I returned home, there was a missed call on my landline. Unknown number. Then another. Then one from Ethan. I did not call back. I made tea, though my hands shook so badly the spoon rattled against the mug. I had just sat down when the phone rang again. This time, the caller ID showed a number I recognized from the notary office. Susan Walker. My heart jumped. "Mrs. Kingston?" she said when I answered. "Yes." "This is Susan Walker. I hope I'm not disturbing you." "No, not at all." There was a careful pause. "I've been thinking about yesterday. I need to be cautious about what I say, but I felt you should know something." I sat straighter. "What is it?" "I reviewed my appointment log. Your daughter-in-law came to my office before yesterday." The kitchen seemed to narrow around me. "Rebecca?" "Yes. About 2.5 weeks ago. She came in asking about notarizing a power of attorney for a family member." My throat tightened. "Was I with her?" "No." "Was Ethan?" "No. She was alone." I gripped the phone with both hands. Susan continued, her voice lower now. "She said her mother-in-law had mobility issues and might not be able to come in person. I explained that I could not notarize a signature unless the signer personally appeared before me with valid identification and signed willingly in my presence." "What did she say?" "She wasn't pleased." I could picture it. Rebecca's polished smile freezing, her eyes sharpening when a rule refused to bend. "Did she bring papers?" I asked. She showed me a form but did not leave it with me. I told her the signer had to be present. She asked whether a previously signed document could be notarized after the fact. I felt sick. "And you said no?" "Absolutely no." Susan paused again. "There may be security footage from that day. Our system usually keeps recordings for 30 days. I can't release anything directly without the proper request, but if your attorney contacts me, I can preserve it." "Preserve it?" "Evidence." Rebecca had walked into that office before the failed appointment. Rebecca had already tried to make a dead piece of paper look alive.
Susan, I whispered, why are you telling me this? Her voice softened. Because yesterday when I asked if you signed that paper, I watched your face. I've worked with enough families to know when someone is confused and when someone is being cornered. You are not confused, Mrs. Kingston. I closed my eyes. It is a powerful thing when a stranger believes you after family has tried to make you doubt yourself. Thank you, I said. Call your attorney, she replied. Soon. I already have. Good. After we hung up, I stayed by the phone listening to the silence. But now the silence was not empty. It had direction. I took out Daniel's folder and added a new note in my own handwriting. Susan says Rebecca came alone. Asked for camera footage. The letters were uneven, but they were mine. My real hand, my real name, my real will. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt the fog lifting. I had not imagined the danger. I had not misunderstood my son. I had not been an emotional old woman making trouble. There was a trail, and Rebecca had left footprints on it. That evening, as the sun lowered behind the maple trees, I stood by the front window and saw Ethan's truck drive slowly past my house. It did not stop, but it slowed. I stepped back from the curtain before he could see me. My heart pounded, but I did not feel helpless. I reached for the phone and called Evelyn. He just drove by, I said. I'll keep my porch light on, she answered. Then I called Daniel's office and left one more message. Mr. Brooks, this is Harold Kingston. Susan Walker has information about Rebecca. She says there may be camera footage. I think we have proof. I hung up and looked around my kitchen. For weeks, I had felt like my own home was closing in around me. Now, for the first time, it felt like the walls were standing with me. The next morning, I put on Michael's favorite blue scarf before I left for Daniel Brooks' office. It was foolish, maybe. A scarf could not protect me from forged documents, desperate sons, or a daughter-in-law who smiled with ice behind her teeth. But when I wrapped it around my neck, I felt Michael near me in the only way I still could. The fabric smelled faintly of cedar from the drawer where I kept it, and for a moment, I could almost hear him say, "Stand straight, Harold. Don't let anyone talk over you." So I stood straight. Daniel's office was in an older building near downtown Columbus, the kind with heavy wooden doors, brass nameplates, and elevators that moved slowly enough to make you think about every floor you passed. I held my document folder against my chest the entire ride up. When the elevator doors opened, a young receptionist greeted me by name, as if Daniel had warned everyone to treat me carefully. "Mrs. Kingston, Mr. Brooks is ready for you." Daniel Brooks stood when I entered his office. He was thinner than I remembered, with white hair, square glasses, and the steady posture of a man who had spent decades handling other people's storms. He came around the desk and shook my hand with both of his. "Harold," he said softly, "Michael would be proud that you came." That was all it took. My eyes filled before I could stop them. "I almost didn't," I admitted. "I know," he said. "That's why Michael prepared." He gave me a chair and waited while I opened the folder. I laid each paper on his desk the way I had arranged them at home. Fake power of attorney, bank letter copy of the deed, trust documents, Michael's note, Susan's information written in my own hand. Daniel did not rush. He read the forged power of attorney first. His face remained calm, but the muscle in his jaw tightened. Then he read the bank letter. Then Michael's note. When he finished, he took off his glasses and set them down. "Mrs. Kingston," he said, "this is not a misunderstanding." I had known that already, but hearing a lawyer say, it made the truth feel heavier. "What is it then?" "It appears someone attempted to use a false or improperly executed power of attorney to establish authority over your property interests. If that document had been accepted, it could have been used to support a home equity application, transfer authorization, or other financial action involving your house. I pressed my hands together in my lap. Could Ethan have taken the house? Daniel leaned back slightly. Not legally, not if everything was challenged in time. But people can create terrible damage before the law catches up. A forged document in the wrong hands can start processes that are expensive, frightening, and difficult to untangle. I thought of Ethan sitting across from me saying, I did not need a whole house anymore. What do we do? First, we preserve evidence. Second, we notify the lender in writing that any power of attorney connected to you is disputed and unauthorized. Third, we contact Susan Walker formally. Fourth, we review the trust. He opened the trust documents and moved through them with practiced eyes. As he read, something in his expression softened. Michael was thorough. He always was. Daniel nodded. This house is held under the Kingston Family Residence Trust. You are the primary beneficiary and acting trustee. During your lifetime, while you are competent and willing, no one else has authority to sell, encumber, transfer, or borrow against the property without your direct participation and valid legal execution. I breathed for what felt like the first time in days. So Ethan cannot take it. Not through this route. Not if we act quickly. The relief came mixed with grief. Because Daniel's words did not only tell me I was protected, they told me protection had been necessary. He picked up Michael's note again. I remember this, he said. My eyes lifted. You do. Michael asked me to help him write something plain. Not legal language, husband language. I looked down at my hands. Did he think Ethan would do something? Daniel was quiet for a moment. Michael loved Ethan, but he was not blind. He worried that Ethan had a habit of needing rescue. Back then, it was smaller things. Credit card debt, bad business ideas, loans from friends. Michael told me, my boy isn't bad, Daniel, but panic makes him weak. Those words hurt because they sounded exactly like Michael. Panic makes him weak. I had spent years telling myself Ethan was simply unlucky, stressed, pressured, influenced. But maybe Michael had seen the seed long before it became a thorn bush around my life. Daniel reached for his phone. With your permission, I'd like to call Susan Walker now. I nodded. He put the call on speaker, introduced himself, and explained that he represented me. Susan's voice came through clear and professional, but warmer when she realized I was in the room. Mrs. Kingston, I'm glad you contacted counsel. Daniel asked her about Rebecca's earlier visit. Susan confirmed it. Rebecca had come alone. Rebecca had asked about notarizing a power of attorney for a mother-in-law who supposedly had trouble leaving the house. Rebecca had been told no. Rebecca had asked whether a signature already on a document could be notarized later. Again, no. Then Susan said the sentence that turned the entire case from suspicion into proof. I checked with our office manager this morning. The footage from that day is still in the system. Daniel looked at me. My heart began beating hard. Can it be preserved? He asked. Yes, I've already asked that it not be overwritten. And yesterday's appointment also preserved. Daniel wrote quickly on a legal pad. Did Mrs. Kingston appear confused or unwilling yesterday? No, Susan said firmly. She appeared cautious and concerned. In my professional opinion, the pressure in that room was not coming from her. I closed my eyes. The pressure in that room was not coming from her. A stranger had seen what my family tried to hide. After Daniel ended the call, he looked at me over his glasses. That camera footage matters. Will it show Rebecca? It may show her entering, speaking with staff, possibly presenting documents. It may not capture audio in the consultation area depending on the office setup, but combined with Susan's testimony, the suspicious document, and the lender letter, it helps establish a pattern. A pattern. That word made Rebecca feel less like a difficult daughter-in-law and more like someone following steps. Daniel then asked the question I had feared. Did Ethan know? I looked toward the window. Cars moved below on the street, tiny and distant. At the notary office, he knew enough not to be surprised. Daniel nodded slowly. We may not yet know who wrote the signature, but we can show who benefited from it and who attempted to use it. I thought about Rebecca's handwriting on the sticky note. Need original signature. I reached into my purse and pulled out a small plastic bag. Inside was the sticky note. Daniel's eyebrows rose. You saved it. I was a librarian, I said. We don't throw away paper until we know what it is. For the first time that morning, Daniel smiled. He examined the note without touching the writing directly. This could be important. We'll keep it. By the time I left his office, Daniel had a plan. He would send notice to Buckeye Heritage Lending. He would contact Susan formally. He would prepare a letter demanding that Ethan and Rebecca cease any attempt to access transfer borrow against or interfere with the property. He also wanted me to consider filing a police report. That last part made my stomach twist again. I don't know if I can do that, I said. Daniel's voice softened. You don't have to decide this second. But understand something, Harold. Reporting a crime is not the same as stopping love. It is stopping harm. I carried those words with me all the way home. Stopping harm. When I pulled into my driveway, Ethan's truck was not there. Rebecca's car was not there. The maple trees moved gently in the wind, and for one fragile moment, my street looked like it used to look before trust cracked open. Inside, I placed the copied documents on the table. Then I called Evelyn and told her what Daniel had found. The camera got her? Evelyn asked. It may have. Good, she said. Some people only understand truth when it comes with a timestamp. That evening, Daniel emailed me a short message confirming that Susan had preserved the footage. I printed it and placed it in the folder. Then I did something I had not done in years. I opened Michael's old desk drawer and took out his fountain pen. It had been too heavy for my hand when he was alive. He used it to sign checks, birthday cards, Christmas tags, and once a silly love note he left inside my library book. I uncapped it and wrote my name on a blank sheet of paper. Harold Kingston. Then I wrote it again and again. Each signature looked like mine because it carried my years, my grief, my arthritis, my steadiness, my hesitation, my strength. It was not perfect. It was real. I placed that page beside the forged document copy. The difference was undeniable, and that was when I understood something. They had not only tried to steal my house, they had tried to replace my voice with a fake one. But now Susan had seen. Daniel had seen. Evelyn knew. Michael had prepared. And I was no longer alone at the table. 3 days after Daniel sent the first legal notice, my son changed the locks on my house. I had gone to the grocery store that morning because I wanted to do one ordinary thing. That may sound strange, but when your whole life has been dragged into documents, lawyers, signatures, and suspicion, a grocery list can feel like a rope tied to the world you used to know. Milk, eggs, bread, tea bags, apples. Nothing dramatic, nothing legal. Nothing that required me to defend my memory or prove my name belonged to me. I remember standing in the produce aisle holding a bag of oranges, thinking how bright they looked under the store lights. A woman beside me was talking to her husband about whether they needed lettuce. Somewhere near the bakery, a child was crying because his mother would not buy cupcakes. Life kept moving around me,
as if my family were not falling apart. For almost 1 hour, I pretended I was only an old woman shopping on a Wednesday morning. Then I came home. At first, I noticed Ethan's truck was not in the driveway, and I felt relieved. Then I saw the small cardboard box sitting beside the porch steps. My box. One I kept in the hallway closet for Christmas ribbons. It was full of my things: a sweater, my slippers, a framed photograph of Michael and me, a plastic bag with toiletries, my Bible. For a second, my mind refused to understand what my eyes were seeing. I climbed the porch steps slowly, my grocery bags cutting into my fingers. I reached for the front door key, slipped it into the lock, and turned. It did not move. I tried again. Nothing. The key no longer fit. I stood there, staring at the brass deadbolt Michael had installed after a break-in 2 streets over 20 years earlier. The same key had worked that morning. The same key had worked for years. Now it stopped at the edge of the lock like I was a stranger, asking permission. I set the grocery bags down. "Ethan," I whispered, though he was not there. I tried the back door. Same thing, new lock. I went around to the side entrance near the garage. New lock. By the time I returned to the porch, my breathing had changed. Not panic, exactly. Something colder. Something humiliating. I was standing outside the house I owned, holding useless keys while my milk sat sweating inside a plastic bag at my feet. Then the front door opened. Rebecca stood there. For one terrible moment, she looked comfortable. She wore jeans and a pale sweater, her hair pulled back bare feet, on my hallway floor. My hallway. Behind her, I could see the table where Michael used to drop his mail. I could see my coat rack. I could see my life standing behind her, like she had stepped into my skin. "What are you doing in my house?" I asked. She folded her arms. "Ethan thought it would be better if you didn't come in upset." I looked at the new lock. "You changed my locks. We secured the property." "The property!" My voice rose on the word. Rebecca's face hardened. "Harold, please don't start screaming on the porch. I am not screaming. I am asking why I am locked out of my own home." She glanced past me toward the street as if the neighbors were the real problem. "Ethan is trying to handle this responsibly. Then where is he on his way?" I stepped forward. Rebecca moved to block the doorway. That was when something inside me nearly broke loose. I had raised a child in that house. I had washed sheets during fevers, cooked holiday meals, prayed over bills, held my husband's hand while he received his diagnosis, kissed his forehead when hospice brought the hospital bed into our living room. And now, my daughter-in-law stood barefoot on my floor, blocking me like I was a trespasser. "Move," I said. "No." The word was quiet, but it was war. I reached for my phone with shaking hands. Rebecca's eyes dropped to it. "Calling Daniel won't help you right now." "I'm calling the police." Her expression changed just a flicker. Before I could press the number, Ethan's truck turned onto the street and pulled into the driveway too fast. He got out quickly, shutting the door with more force than necessary. "Mom," he said, walking toward me. "Put the phone down." I stared at him. "No." He climbed the steps and stood between me and Rebecca. For a moment, he looked like a boy caught between his mother and trouble. But then his jaw tightened, and the man who had sat in the notary's office returned. "We need to cool things down," he said. "You changed my locks." "For safety." "Whose safety? Everyone's." I laughed once. It came out sharp and wounded. "You locked a 69-year-old widow out of her home and called it safety." His face flushed. "You are making this impossible." "I am making what impossible?" "The theft." Rebecca snapped. There it is again. Always the victim. I turned toward her. You are standing inside my house after helping create a fake document with my signature on it. Ethan's voice dropped. Do not talk to my wife like that. I looked at him then, truly looked at him. That sentence told me where he had placed me, not beside him, not above her, outside. I am your mother, I said, and I am your son, he answered. But you don't treat me like one anymore. I gestured toward the box. You packed my Bible in a Christmas ribbon box? His eyes flicked to it, then away. We packed essentials, for what Rebecca answered smoothly. Just a few days somewhere calm. Evelyn's maybe, or a hotel, until your attorney stops stirring everything up. My attorney Ethan leaned closer, lowering his voice as if reason were a secret. Mom, Daniel Brooks is going to turn this into a legal nightmare. If you keep pushing, things could get ugly. They are already ugly. You don't understand what's at stake. My home is at stake. My life is at stake, he shouted. The street went silent. A bird lifted from the maple tree near the sidewalk. For a second, I saw my son without the anger polished over him. He looked exhausted, hollow-eyed, afraid. But fear did not make him innocent. Fear had brought him to my porch with a changed lock. He rubbed his hands over his face. I owe money, he said quieter now. A lot of money. I tried to fix it before you found out. Rebecca said, Ethan, stop. No, he said. She wants the truth. Fine. I stood very still. How much? He looked at the porch floor. Enough that I could lose the business, the truck, maybe the house Rebecca and I rent. Everything. And you decided my house would save you. I decided my house would save you. I decided you didn't need all of it. The sentence landed like a slap. Not because it was loud, because it was honest. I nodded slowly. There it is. Mom? No. Let it stand. At least once, let the truth stand without dressing it up. You didn't need all of it. The sentence landed like a slap. Not because it was loud, because it was honest. I nodded slowly. There it is. Mom? No. Let it stand. At least once let the truth stand without dressing it up. Rebecca stepped forward. We are not doing this in front of the whole neighborhood. I looked past them and saw Evelyn Carter standing in her driveway. She wore her red cardigan, and in her right hand, very calmly, she held her phone. Ethan noticed her too. His face tightened. Great. Now you're involving neighbors. I didn't involve her, I said. You put my belongings on the porch. Evelyn crossed the street with slow, deliberate steps. Harold, she called. Are you all right? Rebecca muttered. This is ridiculous. Evelyn reached the sidewalk and looked at me, then at the box, then at Ethan standing in front of the changed lock. Her expression became hard in a way I had never seen. Did you lock your mother out of her house? Ethan pointed at her. This is family business. Evelyn lifted her phone slightly. Not when it happens on the porch. For the first time that day, Ethan looked uncertain. I looked at him and realized something awful. He had counted on my embarrassment. He had counted on me being too ashamed to make noise, too motherly to call police, too old-fashioned to expose family pain in public, too heartbroken to defend myself while neighbors watched. Rebecca reached down, grabbed the Christmas ribbon box, and shoved it closer to me with her foot. Take your things, Harold. Well, talk once you calm down. Something about her foot touching my belongings finished what the forged signature had begun. I was done being managed. I picked up my phone and called 911. Ethan's face drained. Mom, don't. The operator answered.
"What is the address of your emergency?" I gave it clearly. Then I said, "My son changed the locks on my home and is refusing to let me inside." Rebecca hissed, "You'll regret this." I looked at her, then at my son. "No," I said softly. "I regret not doing it sooner." While we waited, Evelyn stood beside me. She did not touch me. She simply stood there, shoulder to shoulder, as if telling the street that I was not alone. Ethan went down the porch steps and paced the driveway. Rebecca disappeared inside my house. My house. When the police car turned onto the street, the sunlight flashed across its windshield. I felt no victory, only shaking, only grief, only the strange, awful strength of a woman who had finally been pushed so far that even love could no longer keep her silent. The police did not arrest Ethan that day. Part of me expected they might. Part of me feared they would. But life is rarely as clean as stories make it seem. 2 officers arrived, calm and careful, and what they found was not a simple break-in or a stranger forcing entry. They found a mother on the porch, a son claiming he was protecting the property, a daughter-in-law insisting I was confused, and a changed lock that turned my own key useless in my hand. One officer asked Ethan whose name was on the deed. Ethan hesitated. "Mine did not." "Harold Kingston," I said. Rebecca quickly added, "There are legal documents in process." The officer looked at her. "Do you have a court order removing Mrs. Kingston from the property?" Rebecca's face tightened. "No, but do you have documentation showing you are the legal owner?" Ethan looked toward the door. "No." The officer turned back to me. "Ma'am, do you have identification showing this address?" I handed him my driver's license. My fingers shook, but my voice did not. "This is my home." The officer nodded and asked Ethan to let me inside. For the first time that day, my son had to step aside. I wish I could say walking back into my house felt triumphant. It did not. It felt like entering a room after someone had searched your diary. Rebecca's purse was on my hallway table. Ethan's jacket hung on Michael's coat hook. A half-empty glass of water sat on my kitchen counter. Small things, ordinary things, but they cut deeply because they proved how easily they had settled inside after pushing me out. The officers told Ethan and Rebecca to leave until the legal matter was resolved, Rebecca argued. Ethan did not. He looked smaller somehow standing in my hallway, while a uniformed officer told him he could not remain in his mother's home without permission. For a second, I almost pitied him. Then I saw the box on the porch again. My Bible, my slippers, Michael's photograph, and pity hardened into something safer. After they left, Evelyn came in with me. She picked up the grocery bags from the porch, threw away the spoiled milk, and put the apples in a bowl like restoring order was a sacred act. "You shouldn't stay alone tonight," she said. I know. The words surprised me. A week earlier, I would have insisted I was fine. I would have smiled, locked the door, and trembled by myself, because pride sometimes disguises itself as dignity. But that day, I was too tired to perform strength. Daniel arrived within the hour. He came with a locksmith. I had not asked him to, but when I saw the man carrying tools up the porch steps, I nearly cried from relief. "We're changing every lock again," Daniel said. "This time under your instruction." The locksmith worked while Daniel and I sat at the kitchen table. Evelyn stayed arms folded, watching the hallway like she expected Rebecca to leap from a closet. Daniel reviewed what had happened, taking notes. "They forced a confrontation," he said. "That matters. They said I was confused." "They will keep saying that," he replied. "Because if they can make you look unreliable, they can make your objections look emotional instead of factual." I looked down at the table. That's why Ethan wanted the memory test. Daniel's expression softened. "Yes,
The truth was not new, but it still hurt new each time. He opened his briefcase and pulled out a certified copy of the trust documents. I want to walk you through this carefully now. He placed the pages before me, turning them one by one. The Kingston Family Residence Trust. Michael's signature. My signature. Daniel's notary stamp from years before. Everything properly witnessed. Everything in order. Michael created this trust after his first heart episode, Daniel said. He wanted to ensure the house stayed available for your use during your lifetime. He named you as trustee and primary beneficiary. Ethan is listed only as a remainder beneficiary, meaning he may have an interest after your death, but not authority during your life. The words were clinical, but beneath them was love. Michael had not left me with poetry. He had left me protection. So Ethan cannot borrow against it, not without your valid consent and proper authority, and the forged power of attorney invalid on its face if it was not signed by you and properly notarized. But more importantly, the trust creates additional barriers. Even a general power of attorney may not be enough to transfer or encumber trust property unless the trust permits it and the agent acts lawfully. I stared at Michael's signature. He knew. Daniel folded his hands. He knew enough to prepare. A wave of emotion rose so suddenly I had to press my palm against my mouth. For years after Michael died, I had resented all those meetings he dragged me to. Estate planning, trust documents, beneficiaries, legal language. I had called it morbid. He had called it necessary. Now I understood. Love is not always roses or anniversary cards. Sometimes love is a signature on a document years before danger knocks. Sometimes love is a husband saying, "One day when I'm not here, I still want the law standing between you and anyone who tries to move you." Daniel reached into the folder again. There is also something else. My heart tightened. What? He slid a sealed envelope across the table. This was kept in our file. Michael asked that it be given to you only if there was ever a dispute involving the house. I stared at my name in Michael's handwriting. Again, for Harold. My hands trembled as I opened it. The letter was longer than the first. My dearest Harold, if Daniel is giving this to you, then someone has tried to make you feel uncertain about the home we built. I am sorry I am not there to stand in the doorway myself. You always believe the best in people. I love that about you, but I also worried over it. Ethan has a good heart, but he has always been afraid of failure. Fear can make a person reach for what love should have taught him not to touch. Do not give up the house because someone makes you feel guilty. Do not sign anything to keep peace. Peace that costs you your safety is not peace. It is surrender. You have the right to stay. You have the right to say no. You have the right to be believed. I love you beyond this life. Michael. By the time I finished, the page was blurred. Evelyn turned away toward the sink, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Daniel looked down, giving me privacy. But grief does not always want privacy. Sometimes grief wants witnesses. Someone to see that love existed. Someone to see that a dead man had reached across time to hold his wife steady. I pressed the letter against my chest. He knew me, I whispered. Daniel nodded. Yes, he did. The locksmith called from the front door, saying the work was finished. He gave me 3 new keys sealed in a small envelope. I held them like they were not pieces of metal, but pieces of myself returned. Daniel stood. I'm filing an emergency petition, he said. We will ask the court to affirm your authority under the trust invalidate any attempted power of attorney or property action and prevent Ethan and Rebecca from interfering with your access to the home. Will Ethan be in trouble? Daniel did not answer quickly. That depends on what the evidence shows and what actions you choose to pursue. But right now, our priority is protecting you and the property. Protecting you. Not the family, not Ethan's feelings, not Rebecca's reputation. Me. It had been a long time since anyone put my safety first, without asking me to apologize for it. That night, I did not stay alone. Evelyn slept in the guest room with her phone on the nightstand, and true to her word, her grandson's old baseball bat leaning against the wall. I almost laughed when I saw it there. Almost. Before bed, I walked through the house slowly. I touched the back of the sofa, the kitchen chair, the banister Michael polished every spring, the bedroom door Rebecca had opened without permission, the dresser drawer where Michael's first warning had waited. Then I stood in front of Michael's photograph. They tried, I said softly, but you were still here. The house creaked around me, settling into the night. For the first time since the notary's question cracked my life open, I slept more than 2 hours. Not peacefully, not fully, but behind new locks with Michael's letter beside my bed and Evelyn across the hall, I slept knowing one thing Ethan and Rebecca had forgotten. A house built with love can still have walls strong enough to fight back. The hearing was scheduled for a rainy Thursday morning. I woke before dawn, long before my alarm, and listened to the soft tapping of rain against the bedroom window. For a few moments, I lay still beneath the quilt Michael and I had bought on a trip to Tennessee 20 years earlier. The room was dim. The house was quiet. Evelyn had gone back to sleeping in her own home after Daniel arranged temporary protective measures, but she still called every night and every morning. That morning, her call came at 6. "You dressed yet?" she asked. Sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at my shoes. "Good. Shoes are less scary than courtrooms." I smiled despite myself. "I don't know if I can do this." "Yes, you do." I'm sitting on the edge of the bed staring at my shoes. "Good. Shoes are less scary than courtrooms." I smiled despite myself. "I don't know if I can do this." "Yes, you do. You sound very sure." "I am. You already did the hard part." "What was the hard part?" "You stopped explaining your pain to people committed to misunderstanding it." I sat there holding the phone, letting that settle inside me. The hearing was not a full trial. Daniel explained that several times. It was an emergency matter before Judge Richard Collins to determine immediate property access authority under the trust and whether Ethan and Rebecca should be restrained from interfering with the house or using disputed documents. But to me, it felt like Judgment Day. Not because I feared the law, because I feared seeing my son on the other side of a courtroom. Daniel picked me up at 8. Evelyn insisted on coming too. She wore her red cardigan again, the one that had become in my mind a kind of battle flag. At the courthouse, everything felt too bright and too hard. Marble floors, metal detectors, security officers, people whispering in hallways with folders pressed to their chests. Somewhere a child laughed, and the sound seemed out of place like sunlight in a basement. Daniel guided me through the building. "Breathe," he said quietly. "I am. Not like someone trying to survive underwater." I let out a slow breath. When we entered the courtroom, Ethan was already there. He sat at the table on the other side with Rebecca beside him and a lawyer I did not know. Ethan wore a suit jacket that did not quite fit his shoulders anymore. He looked pale, older than he had 2 weeks before. Rebecca sat perfectly straight, her hands folded, her face composed in that polished way she used when strangers were watching. For 1 second, Ethan's eyes met mine. Something passed between us. Shame, maybe. Fear. Memory.
Then Rebecca leaned toward him and whispered, and he looked away. Daniel helped me sit. Evelyn took the bench directly behind us. Judge Richard Collins entered at 9 sharp. He was a tall man with gray hair, a serious face, and reading glasses resting low on his nose. Everyone stood. My knees felt weak, but I stood too. The judge began by reviewing the matter. Kingston Family Residence Trust. Emergency petition regarding property access, disputed power of attorney, alleged forged signature, and attempted interference. Hearing those words spoken aloud made my life sound like something that belonged to someone else. Daniel rose first. Your Honor, my client, Mrs. Harold Kingston, is the lawful trustee and primary beneficiary of the Kingston Family Residence Trust. Her son, Ethan Kingston, and daughter-in-law, Rebecca Kingston, attempted to use a disputed power of attorney document bearing a signature Mrs. Kingston denies making. They then changed the locks on her residence and excluded her from the home without legal authority. The judge looked over the papers. Mrs. Kingston is present. I stood slightly. Yes, Your Honor. He looked at me over his glasses. Not unkindly. Not warmly either. Carefully. Daniel continued presenting the deed, the trust documents, Michael's letters, the bank notice, the copied power of attorney, and the police incident report from the lockout. Then Ethan's lawyer stood. Your Honor, this is a family dispute that has unfortunately escalated. Mr. Kingston acted out of concern for his mother's well-being. There are questions about Mrs. Kingston's recent confusion, emotional volatility, and ability to manage complex property matters independently. There it was. Confusion, emotional volatility. The words were dressed up for court, but I knew their old clothes. Too emotional, too forgetful, too old, too difficult, too attached. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he waited. Ethan's lawyer continued. Mr. Kingston has assisted his mother for years. He has handled repairs bills, transportation, and other matters. The intent was not theft, but protection. Judge Collins looked toward Ethan. Mr. Kingston, did you change the locks? Ethan stood. Yes, Your Honor. Did you have a court order authorizing you to exclude your mother from the residence? No. Your Honor, are you named as trustee? No. Are you the current owner? No. The judge made a note. Rebecca's expression remained smooth, but I saw her fingers tighten. Then Daniel called Susan Walker. She entered through the side door, carrying a folder, wearing a dark blazer, and the calm expression I remembered from the notary office. Seeing her steadied me. She had been the first person outside my home to say no when everyone else expected me to bend. After she was sworn in, Daniel asked her to describe what happened during the appointment. Susan's voice was clear. Mrs. Kingston appeared in person with valid identification. She was alert, responsive, and cautious. When reviewing the documents, she questioned language related to transfer and authority. I observed pressure from the accompanying parties to treat the language as routine. Daniel asked, Did Mrs. Kingston appear confused? No. Did she appear unwilling to ask questions? No. She appeared concerned and appropriately careful. Then he showed her the disputed power of attorney. Did you notarize this document? No. Why not? It was not signed in my presence, and I had reason to question whether Mrs. Kingston had signed it at all. When asked, she denied signing it. Daniel nodded. Did Rebecca Kingston visit your office before that appointment? Rebecca's head lifted. Susan looked toward the judge. Yes. A murmur moved faintly through the courtroom. Judge Collins said, Proceed. Susan explained how Rebecca had come alone, asking whether a power of attorney could be notarized for a mother-in-law who was not present, and whether a previously signed form could be notarized after the fact. Both requests were refused, Susan said. Daniel then submitted a still image from the office security footage preserved by Susan's office. It showed Rebecca entering with a folder under her arm.
Rebecca's lawyer objected, arguing context. Judge Collins allowed it for the limited purpose of the emergency hearing. Then Daniel played the short footage from the later appointment. No audio, only images. I watched myself sitting at the table, small in my navy cardigan. Ethan beside me, Rebecca leaning forward, Susan comparing papers. Me signing my name on a blank page, Susan placing it beside the disputed document. The courtroom seemed to disappear. I was back in that office, watching the truth begin to rise from a page. Daniel paused the footage at the moment Ethan reached toward the folder, and Susan placed her hand on it first. "Your Honor," Daniel said, "this is not consistent with innocent confusion. This is consistent with attempted use of a questionable document and frustration when a notary refused to validate it." Ethan lowered his head. Rebecca whispered something to her lawyer. Then Ethan's lawyer called him to speak. My son stepped forward and was sworn in. His voice shook slightly when he began. "My mother has been overwhelmed since my father died. I've tried to help her. She gets suspicious. She forgets conversations. Rebecca and I thought it was time to organize things so nothing bad happened." Daniel rose for questioning. "Mr. Kingston, did your mother sign the power of attorney in your presence?" Ethan swallowed. "No." "Did she authorize you to sign her name?" "No." "Do you know who signed it?" Ethan's eyes flicked toward Rebecca. So quick. So small. "But Judge Collins saw it. Daniel saw it. I saw it." "I don't know," Ethan said. Daniel stepped closer. "Did you subsed?" Daniel stepped closer. "Did you sub-emite or attempt to use that document in connection with a lender?" Ethan hesitated. His lawyer stood. "Objection." Judge Collins raised a hand. "This is an emergency civil hearing. He may answer if he knows." "MIT or attempt to use that document in connection with a lender." Ethan hesitated. His lawyer stood. "Objection." Judge Collins raised a hand. "This is an emergency civil hearing. He may answer if he knows." Ethan's face had gone gray. "I gave documents to Rebecca," he said. Rebecca turned toward him sharply. Daniel asked, "For what purpose?" "To see what options we had." "What options?" Ethan's voice dropped. "Home equity options." The courtroom went very still. Daniel did not raise his voice. "On your mother's home," Ethan closed his eyes. "Yes." Something inside me folded and hardened at the same time. Not because I had not known, because my son had finally said it under oath. Rebecca's lawyer quickly stood, asking to clarify that no loan had been finalized, no transfer completed, and no funds received. The judge listened, expression unreadable. Then Judge Collins looked at me. "Mrs. Kingston, I have one question. Did you authorize your son or daughter-in-law to pursue home equity options using your residence?" I stood. My knees trembled, but my voice came out clear. "No, Your Honor, I did not." "Did you sign the disputed power of attorney?" "No, Your Honor." "Do you wish to remain in your home?" I looked across the room at Ethan. He would not meet my eyes. Then I thought of Michael's hands on the porch railing, Evelyn's phone raised in the street, Susan's calm refusal, Daniel's folder, my own name written again and again until it felt like mine had returned. "Yes," I said. "I wish to remain in my home." Judge Collins leaned back. After several minutes of review, he spoke. "Based on the evidence presented, the court finds sufficient cause to issue temporary orders. Mrs. Harold Kingston shall retain exclusive access and control over the residence held by the Kingston Family Residence Trust. Ethan Kingston and Rebecca Kingston are prohibited from entering the property. Changing locks, removing belongings, contacting lenders regarding the property, or presenting any power of attorney or authority document on Mrs. Kingston's behalf pending further proceedings." Rebecca's face went white.
Ethan stared at the table. The judge continued.
The disputed power of attorney is not recognized by this court for any purpose at this time. The matter of alleged forgery may be referred to appropriate authorities. The gavel came down, not loudly, but in my chest it sounded like a door unlocking. When Judge Collins' gavel came down, I thought I would feel relief. Instead, I felt hollow.
The courtroom began moving again around me. Papers shuffled, chairs scraped, lawyers gathered folders. Evelyn squeezed my shoulder from behind and whispered, "You did it." Daniel gave me a small nod, the kind of nod that said the first battle had been won. But across the room, my son was still sitting with his head bowed. And that is the cruelty of family betrayal. Even when justice stands beside you, grief still sits across from you, wearing your child's face. Rebecca was the first to move. She stood so quickly her chair struck the table behind her. Her lawyer reached for her arm, but she pulled away. "This is absurd," she hissed, not loudly enough for the judge, but loudly enough for all of us. All of this over paperwork that never even went through. Daniel turned slightly, but I touched his sleeve. "Let her speak," I said quietly. Rebecca's eyes snapped to mine. For weeks, she had spoken over me, around me, and through me. But now, with a court order between us and the forged paper stripped of its power, her polished mask was cracking. "You act like we dragged you into the street," she said. Evelyn muttered behind me. "You put her things on the porch." Rebecca heard it and turned red. Ethan finally lifted his head. "Rebecca, stop." She rounded on him. "No, you stop! You sat there and let them make me look like some criminal mastermind when all I did was try to fix the disaster you made." The room seemed to still. Ethan's lawyer whispered sharply, "Mrs. Kingston not here." But Rebecca was past caution. Her voice trembled with fury. "You told me your mother would never help if we asked straight. You said she'd cling to that house until the day she died. You said we needed options." Ethan stood slowly. "I said I was desperate. You said she owed you." The sentence struck the room like glass breaking. I felt Daniel shift beside me. Ethan looked at me then, and for the first time in days, there was no anger in his face. Only shame. I heard my own voice before I fully realized I was speaking. "Is that what you believed?" Ethan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Rebecca laughed bitterly. "Oh, please, don't act shocked. He has been carrying this for years. Every repair, every errand, every Sunday visit. He said the house should have been partly his already. He said Michael would have wanted him saved." At Michael's name, something in me hardened. "Do not use my husband to excuse this." Rebecca looked like she might answer, but Judge Collins' clerk stepped forward and warned everyone that the courtroom was still in session. Daniel guided me into the hallway before things could get worse. But worse followed us. Ethan came out a few minutes later alone. Rebecca remained with her lawyer near the courtroom doors, speaking fast, pointing once toward me, then toward Ethan, then at the floor, like the building itself had betrayed her. Ethan stopped several feet away. "Mom," that one word nearly undid me, not because it was apology, because it sounded young. I remembered him at 6 years old, standing in the kitchen after breaking Michael's radio, whispering, "Mom," with tears on his cheeks. I remembered him at 17 after his first heartbreak. I remembered him the day Michael died, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. But the man before me now had tried to use a false signature to reach my house. Love remembered everything. So did truth. "What did you do, Ethan?" I asked. His lips pressed together. Daniel said quietly,
Mrs. Kingston, you don't have to speak with him.
I know, I said. Then to Ethan.
Answer me.
Ethan looked down the hall toward Rebecca. She was watching us.
She found the form online,
he said. My stomach tightened.
Rebecca.
He nodded. She said it was just a draft. Something to help the lender understand we might have authority later. She said no one would process anything unless you signed properly. She said it was just a draft. Something to help the lender understand we might have authority later. She said no one would process anything unless you signed properly. Who signed my name? His face crumpled.
I don't know.
Ethan? He swallowed hard. I didn't write it. That was not enough. Did you watch her write it? He closed his eyes.
No. Did you know it was there?
He nodded once, barely. The hallway blurred for a moment. I reached for the wall, and Evelyn was instantly beside me. Ethan took one step forward. Mom, do not touch me. He froze. The words hurt both of us. I saw it, but I did not take them back. He rubbed his face with both hands. I was going to tell you. When... His silence answered. When the money came through? I asked. When the house had a lien on it, when I was already too trapped to say no. He shook his head, tears gathering in his eyes. I thought I could fix it before it became real. It became real the moment my name was forged. He looked at me then, and the truth finally came out without Rebecca's polish or his pride wrapped around it. I owe almost $200,000. Evelyn made a soft sound behind me. Daniel's expression sharpened. Ethan continued voice-breaking. The business loans, penalties, credit cards, money. I borrowed from people I shouldn't have borrowed from. I kept thinking one job would turn it around. Then another. Then another. I didn't tell you because Dad always thought I was reckless, and I couldn't stand proving him right after he was gone. Michael's words came back to me. Panic makes him weak. I looked at my son. Oh, Ethan. For a second, his face twisted with hope, as if pity might become permission, so I stopped it before it could. You should have told me you were drowning, I said. You had no right to pull me under to save yourself. His tears spilled then. I know. No, I said. I don't think you did. Not until that judge said no for me. Rebecca suddenly appeared beside him. Don't confess to things you didn't do. Ethan turned toward her. I'm done. Her face changed. What I said I'm done. She laughed once, but there was panic in it. You're done. Now, after I spent months trying to keep us from losing everything you forged my mother's name. Rebecca's mouth opened. The hallway went silent around us. Her lawyer rushed toward her. Rebecca, stop talking. But Ethan kept going, the dam finally broken. You brought the paper to Susan first. You asked how to notarize it without Mom there. You told me it was only a temporary step. You said once Mom understood how bad things were, she'd be grateful we had already started the process. Rebecca's eyes burned. You begged me to fix it. I begged you to help me, Ethan said. Not help me betray her. For a moment, Rebecca looked at him as if he were the traitor. Then she turned to me. You want the truth, Harold Fine. Your son came to me crying because he was about to lose everything. You had a paid-off house sitting there while we were drowning. One signature could have bought time. That's all it was supposed to do. Buy time. One signature, I said. My voice was quiet, but it stopped her. That signature was my life. Rebecca looked away first. Daniel stepped between us. This conversation is over. And it was. Not because everything had been said, but because enough had finally been revealed. Within an hour, Daniel informed me that he would forward the court transcript, Susan's statement, the lender notice, and the disputed document to the appropriate authorities. Rebecca's lawyer tried to soften it. Ethan's lawyer tried to separate his actions from hers. But the truth had already slipped out in the hallway in front of witnesses after a judge had already questioned the document's validity. By late afternoon, I was home. The rain had stopped. The porch was damp. The Christmas ribbon box was gone. Evelyn had thrown it away while I was at court because, in her words, that box has bad energy. I walked inside slowly. The house smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old wood. My new key turned smoothly in the lock. The sound made me cry. Not hard, just enough. I placed Michael's second letter on the mantel beside his photograph. Then I sat at the kitchen table and let myself remember Ethan as a baby. That may seem strange after everything, but I needed to remember that evil had not entered my life as a monster. It had entered as fear, pride, debt, silence, and entitlement. It had entered through a son who had once loved me and still somehow maybe did. But love without honesty had become dangerous, and I could no longer afford dangerous love. That evening, Ethan called 3 times. I did not answer. Rebecca did not call. Daniel called once to say the court order had been filed and served, and that any further contact regarding the house should go through him. After we hung up, I turned off the kitchen light and stood in the doorway. For the first time, I said the truth aloud, with no one there to soften it. My son tried to take my house. The words hurt. Then I said the rest. But he failed, and in the darkness with Michael's photograph watching over the room, I finally believed it. The court order gave me back my house on paper. But paper cannot sweep a kitchen. Paper cannot remove the feeling of Rebecca's bare feet on my hallway floor. Paper cannot make a mother stop hearing her son say, "You don't need all of it." In the days after the hearing, the house felt both mine and not mine. The locks were new. Daniel had confirmed with the lender that no loan would move forward. Susan's statement was preserved. The disputed power of attorney had no power, at least not over me. Legally, I was protected. Emotionally, I was walking room to room through a house that had survived an attempted theft, but not an attempted betrayal. I started with the front hall. Evelyn came over with a bucket lemon cleaner rubber gloves and the attitude of a woman preparing for battle. "We're washing every surface they touched," she announced. I stood by the stairs holding a dust cloth. "Evelyn, you don't have to do all this. I know I don't. That's why it counts." So we cleaned, not because the house was dirty, because I needed to reclaim it with my hands. I wiped the hallway table where Rebecca had placed her purse. I polished the coat hook where Ethan had hung his jacket. I washed the kitchen counter where her glass had sat. Evelyn scrubbed the porch steps so fiercely I worried she might remove the paint. Every now and then she muttered, "Barefoot in another woman's house," as if that were the highest crime on the list. By noon, the house smelled like lemons vinegar and old wood. The windows were open. Cool air moved through the rooms. For the first time in weeks, the house seemed to exhale. But then I opened the hallway closet. Inside, one shelf was empty. At first, I only stared. Then I realized what was missing. Michael's tool bag. It was old brown, heavy, and cracked at the handles. After he died, I could not bring myself to move it. It stayed on the closet shelf with his tape measure screwdrivers, pliers, and the little flashlight he used whenever something rattled behind the furnace. "Evelyn," I called softly. She came from the kitchen, wiping her hands. "What is it?" "His tools are gone." Her face changed. We searched everywhere. The basement shelves, the garage, the laundry room, the porch storage bench. Nothing. The tool bag was gone. It was not expensive. Most of the tools were old. Some had paint on the handles. One screwdriver had Ethan's name scratched into it from a school project in 5th grade, but Michael's hands had held them. That made them worth more than anything Rebecca could have calculated. I called Daniel. He told me to make a list of any missing items and not contact Ethan directly. Even small removals matter, he said. Small removals. I almost laughed. Nothing about losing that tool bag felt small. That afternoon, I sat on the basement stairs and cried harder over those tools than I had over the bank letter. Maybe because the tools were not legal. They were personal. The forged signature attacked my rights. The missing tool bag attacked my memories. 2 days later, Daniel called. Harold, I have an update. The lender has frozen everything connected to the application. They confirmed Ethan provided preliminary financial information and Rebecca uploaded supporting documents through their portal. Uploaded, yes. With my name, with your property address and the disputed power of attorney included as part of the authority review. I closed my eyes. Did Ethan know? Daniel paused. The portal activity came from Rebecca's email, but Ethan's business debt documents were attached. That will be difficult for him to explain away. I thanked him and hung up. Then I sat at the kitchen table and looked at the chair Ethan used to sit in every Sunday. For so many years, that chair had meant comfort. Now, it looked like evidence. The following week, official consequences began arriving like slow thunder. Rebecca's employer placed her on leave after learning of the investigation, especially because she worked around real estate documents. Ethan's contracting partner withdrew from the business. Creditors began calling him directly. Daniel told me there could be criminal inquiries, though nothing moved quickly. Rebecca left Ethan before any charges were decided. I heard it from Evelyn, who heard it from a neighbor whose cousin lived near the apartment complex, where Ethan and Rebecca rented a townhouse. She packed a white SUV. I heard it from Evelyn, who heard it from a neighbor whose cousin lived near the apartment complex, where Ethan and Rebecca rented a townhouse. She packed a white SUV. Evelyn reported standing in my kitchen with the seriousness of a news anchor. 3 suitcases, 2 garment bags, and not 1 ounce of shame. I should not have felt anything, but I did. Not satisfaction, not pity exactly, just a tired sadness. People who build a marriage on desperation often blame each other when the roof starts leaking. Ethan did not call me for almost 2 weeks after Rebecca left. He sent one text. I found Dad's tool bag. I'll return it. I stared at the message for a long time. Not, I'm sorry, not, I was wrong. Just the tool bag. A younger version of me might have replied immediately. She might have written, "Thank you, honey. Are you eating? Are you all right? Do you need anything?" That woman had loved without locks. I was learning to love differently. I forwarded the message to Daniel and did not answer. The tool bag arrived the next day by courier, not by Ethan's hand. It sat on my porch in a cardboard shipping box wrapped in brown paper. I brought it inside and opened it at the kitchen table. There it was, the cracked leather, the old brass buckle, the faint smell of metal and dust and Michael. A note was tucked inside. "Mom." I took it when I thought I wouldn't be allowed back in the house. I told myself Dad would have wanted me to have it. That was a lie. I know that now. Ethan. I read the note twice. Then I folded it and placed it in the same folder where I kept all the other papers. Evidence and apologies had begun to look strangely alike. That evening, I carried the tool bag to the basement and placed it on Michael's workbench. The workbench was still cluttered the way he left it: jars of screws, a level, an old radio, a coffee can full of mismatched nails. I stood there for a while, resting my hand on the bag. "You came home?" I whispered. I was speaking to the tools and to myself. Over the next few weeks, the house changed. Not dramatically, not all at once, but small things shifted. I replaced the curtains in the kitchen, not because the old ones were ruined, but because I wanted one room untouched by memory of that confrontation. I moved Michael's photograph from the small shelf by the doorway to the mantel where the light hit it every morning. I put fresh flowers on the dining table every Friday, and I changed the guest room.
For years, that room had remained Ethan's room in disguise. Old baseball cards in a shoebox, a faded college sweatshirt in the closet, a framed photo from his high school graduation. Part of me had kept it waiting for him, not physically perhaps, but emotionally. A mother always leaves one room unlocked in her heart. One afternoon, with Evelyn beside me, I packed Ethan's old things carefully. Not angrily, carefully. "That's still kindness," Evelyn said, watching me fold the sweatshirt.
I know. You're allowed to be angry. I am angry. You fold very neatly for an angry woman. I smiled faintly. I was a librarian. We placed everything in labeled bins, not thrown away, not displayed, stored. Then we turned the room into a sitting room, a reading chair by the window, a small table, a lamp, my mother's quilt across the back of the chair, shelves for books I had been keeping in boxes since retirement. The first evening I sat there, I cried again, not because of Ethan this time, because I had made a room for myself in my own house. It struck me how many women spend their lives preserving space for others. A husband's chair, a child's room, a guest bed, a holiday table, a drawer for someone else's things. And sometimes, after everyone has taken what they needed, we look around and realize we forgot to reserve even one corner for our own becoming. I began reading there every morning. Sometimes I read novels, sometimes devotionals, sometimes legal brochures Daniel gave me about elder financial abuse property protection and powers of attorney. The words were not as comforting as fiction, but they were useful, and usefulness had become its own kind of comfort. One morning, Evelyn came over with muffins and found me highlighting a pamphlet. "Look at you," she said. "Dangerous woman with a yellow marker. I should have learned this years ago, maybe. But you're learning it now." I looked around the sitting room, the lamp, the books, the flowers outside the window. "Yes," I said, "I am." By then, the neighborhood knew something had happened, though few people knew the whole story. Some asked careful questions. Some avoided asking because older neighborhoods still have manners. A few women from church stopped by with casseroles and eyes full of curiosity. I told only what I wanted. "My son made a serious mistake involving my house," I would say. "The court protected me. That was enough." But every time I said it, another layer of shame fell away. The house became quiet again. This time, the quiet was different. It was not the silence before danger. It was the quiet after a storm when broken branches still lie in the yard, but the sky has cleared enough for you to see what remained standing. And what remained standing was me. Ethan came back on a Sunday afternoon. Not to the porch, not to the door. He stopped at the sidewalk, exactly where the court order allowed him to stand without violating the boundary Daniel had helped put in place. I saw him from the sitting room window, standing beneath the maple tree with his hands in the pockets of a coat I had bought him 3 Christmases earlier. For a long moment, I did not move. My first instinct was still to open the door. That frightened me. Even after the forged signature, the lockout, the courtroom, the debt, and the humiliation, some old part of me still wanted to ask whether he had eaten. Motherhood does not shut off like a lamp. It lingers. It reaches. Sometimes it reaches toward people who have already proven they will take the whole arm if offered a hand. Ethan looked thinner. His hair had grown uneven, and there was gray at his temples I did not remember seeing before. He did not look like the angry man who had stood on my porch. He looked like a man who had finally run out of places to hide from himself. My phone rang. It was him. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Mom," he said. I closed my eyes. "What do you need, Ethan? Nothing." That answer surprised me.
I don't need anything from you, he said. I just wanted to ask if you would come outside for 5 minutes. I won't come closer. I promise. I looked toward Michael's photograph on the mantel. Then I looked at the folder on the shelf where the court order still rested. Love and wisdom stood on opposite sides of the room, waiting to see which one I would obey. In the end, I obeyed both. I called Evelyn first. I'm going outside to speak with Ethan. I'll be on my porch in 30 seconds, she said. Then I called Daniel and left a voicemail stating what was happening. After that, I put on my coat, took my phone, and stepped outside. Evelyn was already on her porch. Ethan saw her and almost smiled. She still hates me. She never hated you, I said. She saw you clearly. He lowered his head. The late afternoon light fell across the sidewalk. A few leaves moved along the curb. Somewhere down the street, someone was mowing a lawn, that steady American Sunday sound that used to make me think the world was safe. Ethan took a breath. Rebecca left. I know. She's being investigated. I know. I may be too. I know. He nodded as if each answer was deserved. I'm not here to ask you to stop anything. That was the first sentence that made me truly listen. I won't lie, he continued. Part of me wanted to. Part of me still wakes up thinking if I could just explain it right, you'd understand. But there is no right explanation for what I did. I stood still. He wiped his eyes, quickly ashamed of the tears before they even fully appeared. I knew about the paper. I didn't write your name, but I knew Rebecca had something with your signature on it. I told myself it was just temporary. I told myself no one would get hurt if I fixed the debt fast enough. I told myself Dad's house should save Dad's son. His voice broke. But it was never Dad's house anymore. It was yours. I felt the words enter me slowly. Not healing everything, but touching the wound honestly. You tried to make me look incompetent, I said. He nodded. Yes. You let your lawyer say I was confused. Yes. You changed my locks. He looked at the house behind me, then back at the sidewalk. Yes. You put my Bible in a box. His face crumpled at that. I know. For the first time, he did not defend himself. He did not say he was scared. He did not mention debt or pressure or Rebecca. He simply stood there and let the truth remain heavier than his excuses. I am sorry, he said. Not because I got caught. Not because Rebecca left. Not because court scared me. I am sorry because when I was drowning, I reached for the one person who had always saved me, and instead of asking for your hand, I tried to steal your ground. I looked away because tears had come into my eyes, and I did not want him to think tears meant permission. Forgiveness is not the same as access. That was something I had learned late, but not too late. I forgive you in my heart, I said. He closed his eyes, shaking. But you cannot come into my house. His eyes opened. I know. You cannot handle my papers. I know. You cannot ask me for money. I won't. You cannot use guilt as a key anymore. He pressed his lips together and nodded. I understand. I studied him for a long moment. No, I said softly. You are beginning to. A sad, small smile crossed his face. That sounds like you. It is me, I said. The real one. The one whose signature you forgot was attached to a soul. He bowed his head. We stood in silence for a while. Mother and son,
Not healed, not destroyed, something in between. A bridge burned behind us, and maybe someday another would be built, but it would not be built from my deed, my savings, or my silence. It would have to be built from truth. Ethan left without touching me. He walked back to his car, stopped once, looked at the house, and then drove away. I stayed on the sidewalk until the sound of his engine disappeared. Evelyn called across the street. "You all right?" I turned toward her. "No." She nodded. "Good answer." Then she came over and we sat on the porch together until the evening cooled.
In the months that followed, my life did not become perfect. Court matters continued. Ethan entered a debt counseling program. Rebecca faced consequences of her own. Daniel kept me informed only when necessary because he understood I wanted protection, not obsession. But something unexpected happened. Women started coming to me. First one from church. Her nephew wanted her to sign a bank form she did not understand. Then a neighbor's sister, whose daughter kept pressuring her to add a name to the deed. Then Evelyn brought a friend who had given her son access to her checking account and now felt afraid to ask questions. At first, we met at my kitchen table. Then the group grew. So I opened the sitting room.
The room that had once been Ethan's room became a place where older women sat, with coffee folders, reading glasses, and trembling hands. We did not give legal advice. Daniel made sure of that. But we encouraged each other to ask questions, call attorneys read before signing. Keep copies, and never confuse pressure with love. I called the group the Front Porch Circle. Evelyn said it sounded too sweet for a room full of dangerous women with highlighters. Maybe she was right, but I liked it. Every Thursday afternoon, my house filled with voices again. Not the old voices. Not Michael's laugh from the porch. Not Ethan's childhood footsteps. Not the version of family I had lost. New voices. Women learning that they had the right to say no. Women discovering that being kind did not require being careless. Women realizing that a signature was not just ink. It was consent. It was authority. It was identity. One afternoon, after everyone left, I stood in the doorway of the sitting room and looked at the circle of empty chairs. Michael's photograph sat on the mantel down the hall, catching the same late light that used to touch his face when he read the newspaper after supper. "You were right," I whispered. The house was not just a house. It was shelter. It was memory. It was proof that a woman's life could be threatened and still not be taken. My son tried to take my house.
A notary exposed a forged signature. But what saved me was more than a document, more than a trust, more than a courtroom. It was the moment I finally believed my own voice deserved to be louder than anyone else's demand. And if there is one thing I want every woman listening to my story to remember, it is this: love your family deeply. But never hand them the pen unless your heart, your mind, and your eyes are fully awake.